Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the meeting. Announcements, reminder, re-audio equipment. Press the large button if you wish to speak. The microphone will then turn green to indicate that you are registered and will flash green when you are the next speaker on the list. The microphone will turn red when I call you to speak. So, Julie, do you want to say something?
Okay, can I remind members of the Council of the restrictions on voting in accordance with Section 106 of the Local Government and Finance Act 1992 in relation to Agenda Item 10. So if a member is 2 months or more in arrears with council tax payments, they must declare that at the meeting as soon as practicable. If that does apply, the member may not vote on the item, but they may speak. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Jackie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to labour the point on the new IT, but I just do think it's worth me just kind of stressing that since the last meeting, we have been working really hard to improve the system because of the teething problems we had. So I would just ask members just to bear with us. We've got contractors in the room and we've got IT staff, so if there are any glitches today, hopefully we'll be able to resolve them. And I'd just like one other request really, which is, can I just ask members that if they press the button and they speak, they do bring the mic towards them, because there are some, it's difficult to hear if you don't put the mic towards your mouth. Okay, thank you.
Can I also mention item 17 has been withdrawn. Thank you. Item 2, are there any apologies? Councillor Sokal.
Mr. Mayor, I got apology from Councillor Shabir Pandor, Councillor Mushraf Parvez, and Councillor Afaq Bot. He will be here anytime. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokal. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Councillor Vivian Lees Hamilton and Councillor Kath Taylor will both be absent.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you. Councillor Lyons and Councillor White.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. Item 3, can I move the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 18th of September 2019 are approved as a correct record?
Seconded.
Thank you. Can we show of hands, please? Is that carried? Item 4. Members who have any interest should disclose their interest now. Are there any interest to declare?
Members, you'll probably recall that at the last meeting we had an item on the agenda, which is still on the agenda, which is the motion around pension credit. So if anybody benefits directly from a free TV licence or through a spouse or partner or someone who lives in the household, can I remind you to fill in the declaration of interest form? You don't need to stand up and declare it. It's not something which is a pecuniary interest, it's another interest. You're able to speak and vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Can I remind any members who have declared any interest to complete the form and submit to the clerk by the end of the meeting? Item 5, petitions from member of the council. Are there any petitions? Councillor Cooper.
It's not a petition. I pressed after the last item. It's a request under Procedure Rule 15.3 to reorder the agenda. We have a motion 20, on Leeds Bradford Airport. We have removed the motion on on provision of local services. That's been taken off. We would like to substitute motion 20 for the one we've removed under Procedure Rule 15.3. We have a climate emergency, and this is about that, and we think it needs debating.
Yeah. Who's proposing? Yeah, who's seconding? Right. Right, okay, can we have a show of hands, please, for in favour? All those in favour? Right, against? That's not carried, thank you. Item 6, to receive deputations or petitions from members of the public. We have 3 deputations this evening, and the first one is Huddersfield Market Traders. Welcome to the meeting. Please can you introduce yourself and the subject of matters of your deputation. You have 5 minutes to present your deputations, and you can start now. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time out to see us all. We represent traders Lynn, Nigel and I, Mark Smith, we represent the National Market Traders Federation, Huddersfield Indoor Market Group, which is the market just across the road here. The aim of this petition is to keep the final destination of the indoor market central to Huddersfield Town, preferably around the King Street Shambles area, as opposed to being moved to the site of the open market, which is the only option Kirklees have given so far. The Tenants Association represents the views of the majority of Huddersfield Indoor Market, some 60 businesses and hundreds of employees. We actively seek and engage in a partnership approach to our activities, especially with Kirklees. The tenants and market management team exchange views and concerns regularly and develop ideas to improve the market community. The tenants even nominating Chris Cotton for the National Market Traders Federation Market Manager of the Year Award 2019, which he won. Together we promoted the award-winning Temporary Contemporary, Love Your Local Market, Easter and Halloween events, and the best grotto in Huddersfield, where the big man himself sees 600 children a year. We help financially and physically wherever possible as an association. With this in mind, it is with great reluctance that the course of action this petition entails was taken, but it was felt it was needed to raise the profile of the indoor market group's wishes in response to the council's planned proposals outlined in the blueprint. The tenants were given no choice in leaving our home, Queensgate Market, but we have tried to accommodate the bigger picture of the blueprint and commend Kirklees for its bold vision, but ask for the caution as it pursues its almost blinkered approach to the blueprint plans, which the blueprint plans are built around, that of wanting Queensgate Market as a sound space for the Year of Music 2023 and the game of chance roulette they are playing with the market tenants and the upheaval and uncertain future it entails. We were not privy to any scant plans for the market in the blueprint until the 25th and 26th of June's unveiling, and even worse, found that certain parties were told of and even shown the plans months before the tenants whom it affected, and the next day we were served with a notice to quit. The tenants were asked democratically what course of action they wanted to pursue, and public support was then accumulated, and it emphatically supports the idea that the final destination of the market should be central to the town centre, where Kirklees want the future main retail shopping area to be. Kingsgate and King Street, and particularly Kingsgate, as indicated in the blueprint, and the Cross Church Street improvements literature, and not the outdoor area on the far end of town. Kirklees Council are understandably wanting to shrink the retail footprint. Our idea of keeping the market central will do that. Moving us to the outskirts simply will not. The tenants have written various letters to officials setting out alternative or additional ideas to the blueprints for the markets, which were vastly overlooked and vaguely represented in the original blueprint. We've easily collected 4,500 physical signatures in 3 to 4 weeks without going online, showing support for our aims. Queensgate Market Hall was going to be at the heart of the cultural quarter, we were told, which it is, but it was omitted that the market traders would not be the tenants. Reducing the retail environment and replacing shops with a museum, art gallery and sound space won't in itself increase footfall within the town centre. The award-winning Temporary Contemporary in the market is an idea to integrate culture, retail and the public realm so they could feed and grow off each other. Please don't separate them out now. A resident of Barcelona, a cultural synonym, when asked what she thought of the cultural quarter, said it won't work. The heart of Barcelona has no people in it. You have to go to the outskirts where the shop starts to see people milling about, she says. This monumental opportunity to shape the future of the town for the next 50 years plus needs an unprecedented openness and transparency from Kirklees in consultations.
Got 30 seconds remaining. Thank you.
Don't spend millions, and as the Guardian newspaper printed about Barnsley's recent activity not working, and end up with a yawning difference in perception between what the people really want and what councillors and planners think they want. The market needs to remain central and ideally in one move. We are not opponents and would love to take this opportunity to invite councillors into the market to meet traders and discuss future developments that will benefit the 10-year plan, the public and the traders.
Can you please wind up now?
Yeah, we're finished. We would like to be involved first-hand in future planning for the proposed new market in both the site layout. After all, this is our future. Many thanks, the National Market Traders Federation, Huddersfield Indoor Market Group.
Thank you for that, Councillor McBride.
Thank you, Martin. And I missed one. Nigel, sorry. We've talked before. You're aware of our plans. I've said to you, I'm going to come with Chris Cotton to talk at length about future. Everything's not predetermined. We will explore our ambitions together with what you want, and we will look at that carefully. We're not going to walk all over you. We're going to work with you to achieve what we both want. Okay. Thank you. See you next week or the week after.
Yeah. Thank you for attending the meeting. Thank you. Can we have the next deputation, please? Next deputation is the Climate Emergency Group. Can I welcome you to the meeting? Please can you introduce yourself and your subject of the matter of your deputations. You have 5 minutes to present your deputation. You can start now. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm here to represent the Kirklees Climate Emergency Group. In January, this council resolved to declare a climate emergency and publicise this to the people of Kirklees to raise awareness and to support the public to take effective action. It's now 9 months since that commitment was made, but to date there appears to have been no significant action on this resolution. We're aware that the Council is awaiting the delayed report of the Working Party, which the Council also resolved to establish. However, the commitment to publicise the climate emergency was a separate resolution and need not be dependent on the Working Party. We would be happy to work with the Council on the strategy to help start communicating the climate emergency to local Kirklees residents, and we thought it might be helpful to offer a draft letter to start this process. Here is the suggested letter, which I'll read out. Dear Kirklees resident, we regret to inform you that we are facing a climate emergency. We do not want to scare people unnecessarily, but we feel it's our responsibility to be honest about what faces us. The scientific evidence is now very clear. Our message until recently has been that we're on track with our environmental policy. However, the achievements we've made so far have barely scratched the surface of what needs to be done. We've been warned by the United Nations that we are currently on track to see over 3 degrees centigrade of global warming within most of our lifetimes, even with all the current climate policies and commitments. There's a clear scientific consensus about this, and also that this will lead to catastrophic failure of the natural world that supports us. There are many in the scientific community who judge that our civilization is likely to collapse as a result. Many countries and communities are already suffering, for example, from sea level rises, flooding and droughts. There might soon be a day when the shops no longer have food, electricity no longer flows and the taps are dry. How we respond to this crisis depends on us all. We're advised that it's not too late to avert the very worst effects and that there's still possibility that we can survive as a civilized society. But the changes we need to make will be extreme, immediate and all-encompassing, and we should be starting right now. It's not an option to continue as we are. We're all in this together, but we recognise that as your elected leaders, we have responsibility to give leadership, and that if we do not do so, we may in the future be judged to have been profoundly negligent in view of the clear scientific evidence. We'd like to work with the entire community to find a way forward to address this crisis. We aim to provide as much information as we can about what we can do, and we'll follow this up with a series of public meetings and the formation of a citizens' assembly where we can work together to create solutions to the crisis we all face. We need your help if we're going to come up with ideas and projects that will deliver the massive changes required in the way that we use energy and other natural resources in our homes, in our streets, and in our schools and workplaces. If you want to help protect our local environment now and for our children, then please register your interest. We welcome any help or feedback. Yours sincerely. So that's what we would like the Council to be addressing.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Councillor Mehta.
Thank you, Ali. As you know, 9 months ago, or 10 months ago in January, we passed the motion about climate emergency. We set up the working party, cross-party working group, which has worked very, very hard and has concluded the issue will come to Council next month. I have said that I'm very passionate. We're all very passionate. Climate emergency is a national issue and hence requires national recognition. And I would say that it's almost like safeguarding. So everything we do, all of us, including the Council, requires us to change our lifestyle and our habits. Now, in relation to the Council itself, it's actually paid a lot of attention to that motion and has started drip feeding, communicating what we are doing in relation to the services across the Council. We will, of course, use our very many platforms along with services to publicise what the Council is doing. In relation to this issue, we require people, places and partnerships to actually deliver our seamless climate emergency response. All we can do as a Council is influence and look at what we're doing and ensuring that what we're doing is we're leading the way, but we could not do this without all of you in here and out hearing me on podcast, helping us to move forward as a district. So please be reassured. All I can say is together we can overcome this climate emergency. Thank you.
Thank you for attending the meeting. Thank you. Next deputation, please. The next deputation is Greenhead Trees, Save Greenhead Trees. Welcome to the meeting. Please can you introduce yourself and the subject matter of your deputation You have 5 minutes to present your petition. You can start now. Thank you.
Heather Peacock. Richard
Stowe.
Yeah. Last week, our group was speaking at the Economic and Neighbourhood Scrutiny Panel. We were talking about the New Street policy, and we congratulated the council about certain aspects of this policy. At the meeting, the ancient woodlands famous for the grave of Robin Hood were brought up. The subject of planting trees to mitigate the loss of an ancient woodland were discussed. As the tree subgroup, we were horrified that a road could be laid that could destroy parts of the ancient woodland. Last week, the Woodland Trust said ancient woodland could not be replaced by planting trees elsewhere. These woods are irreplaceable and the grounds and trees are so important. This week, as our group got more familiar with the people of Kirklees, we've been inundated with planning developments involved lots of trees, hedges and green areas. Ashbrow, Batley, Kirky and Bradley Woods, just to mention a few that are affected. This week, Sir David Battenbury said we need to get tougher on planning legislation to stop the destruction of our natural world. All this felling is out of step with the council announcing a climate emergency. So should the council consider their position in the light of all this natural destruction? Richard.
So we express support for the Combined Authority commitment to carbon reduction. However, proposed tree felling at Robin Hood's grave, Kirklees Hall and Bradley would nowhere near be mitigated by planting of, quotes, a few hundred trees. Mature woodland fixes about 15 times as much carbon as 10-year-old new planting. So the 6 hectares destroyed by the scheme would need 90 hectares of new planting to be equivalent to the carbon now being fixed out of the air. The 180,000 new trees, the CO2 equivalent to the loss at Cooper Bridge, is about equivalent to Kirklees Council's whole 25-year 30% tree cover increase ambition, starting to mitigate significantly in 10 years' time, only begin to break even from about 50 years. The time is now, the future in your hands. Councillors will have heard leaders of developing countries complain that we're arrogant to preach to them about conserving rainforests while we don't conserve our forests. Europe has 30% tree cover, the UK 10%, Kirklees 8%. This is Kirklees' opportunity to show commitment globally to all our children, grandchildren and the world they will inherit. This is our community's rainforest. This is no exaggeration. A wise decision to conserve existing trees and woodland is more than equivalent to validating and enhancing Kirklees' 25-year reforestation policy or cancelling it out at a stroke. Cancellation of the road scheme will cost nothing. Minor junction improvement could deliver improved traffic flow and reduced emissions rapidly. Vital woodland, countryside and river corridor is conducive with climate policy in this valuable buffer zone, and millions can be diverted to sustainable infrastructure instead. Dare I say, Robin Hood would turn in his grave. This example of development pressure on tree cover makes the case for an immediate, full, Kirklees-wide area tree preservation order, subdivided as appropriate, piloted on the most critical area to tree loss, to fulfil council and combined authority commitment to climate mitigation by tree cover as the primary and most effective means to climate mitigation, with immediate effect, just in time. Not 10 years or 25 years, please announce action with boots on the ground tomorrow and tell the world with pride. Incidentally, we're concerned that we're only represented by 2 Kirklees councillors on the combined authority. It lacks accountability to the electorate and no rights to be heard on such major impact policies. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Walker.
I want to make a contribution and then Councillor Walker will add something to it. The Cooper Bridge scheme, by the way, sorry, and thank you for your contribution, appreciate it. The Cooper Bridge scheme is an early stage of detailed planning. So at the moment we can't say if and how many trees might be affected by proposals to widen the A6444. Whatever comes forward will need to meet the criteria of the West Yorkshire Transport Fund, which will require that any trees lost will need to be replaced and compensated for adequately to respond effectively. It's worth noting that the scheme will have a massive positive impact in terms of reducing carbon and polluting emissions. This is probably the biggest scheme which will have that impact in the whole of West Yorkshire. Surely we want to achieve that objective and at the same time mitigate problems that might be created in the process. My colleague wants to add something to that.
Yeah, just wait a thing to warm up. Yeah, I understand your concerns and thanks very much for coming along to share those. Richard and I, we've had a lot of discussions over the years and recently about tree issues. Just to clarify one or two things. From the presentation at the Scrutiny Committee, you would have picked up that actually when we've done the canopy survey of trees, we actually have more trees than we thought. Initially, we thought we'd about 11% tree cover, but the actual figure now is 15.2%, which is interesting actually, because if we're going to improve that, boost that by 30% over the next 10 years, and it is 10 years, not 25 years, it does mean that we're starting from a lower base. It does mean that we will have to plant more trees. Councillor McBride's point about what's happening with the road scheme. As it's not actually being finalised yet, we're not exactly sure what would have to happen in terms of replacing any trees, in terms of looking at the carbon impact of the project. But as a result of the things that are happening within the Combined Authority, we would expect that undertaking that kind of study would be part of any major project that takes place. I regret in many ways the fact that we're having to build more roads. I think, you know, the long term, I would like to see other ways of people being transported around our area. I think building more roads is just a short-term measure, really. With other planning, I think it is really important that we look very carefully at where developments are taking place. We try to minimise the impact it has on things like woodland and on other habitats which are of importance. But it is getting the balance. We can't stop completely development within the area. I think to do that would have very profound both economic and social consequences. So we need to make sure the kind of impact assessments that we've been talking
Councillor
about.
Walker, 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm nearly finished. We need to make sure that we employ those. Any extra trees that need to be planted to replace the ones that are cut down in terms of their carbon impact will be on top of the trees that we're already looking at. Just as things like ash dieback, we need to replace those trees. The other key point, I think, is that the trees that we're going to plant as a local authority on our land is only a small portion of the total plan. The total plan is actually for 2,657,000 trees to be planted. That up to 257,000 on our land is only about 10% of that. And it is working with groups. You know, Sunday afternoon I spent talking with you and other people over in Home Firth about the opportunities for a Home Valley forest. Those kind of things are absolutely critical for the future. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker, and thank you for attending the meeting. Thank you. Is there any petitions from the member of the public? 2, 3. Right. Welcome to the meeting. Please introduce yourselves to members, stating your name and to whom your question is addressed to. And you can ask your question now. Thank you.
My name's Leslie Hawthorne. I'm here today as a representative of Huddersfield Friends of the Earth, and our question is in support of the motion on the Leeds-Bradford Airport Link Road. In June of this year, West Yorkshire Combined Authority declared a climate emergency, and yet it currently plans to spend £100 million of public money on a link road to Leeds-Bradford Airport that would enable the airport to double its passengers in the next decade. Our question to the Council is simple. How is this compatible with a climate emergency?
Councillor McBride, yeah?
I'll reply to this extensively when we come into the debate, but the point is this is not money to improve links to encourage development of the airport. The object of the exercise is a park and ride scheme, and that is on that basis it was approved.
Yeah, you've got supplementary. No? No. Well, welcome to the meeting. Please introduce yourself to members, stating your name and to whom your question is addressed to. And you can ask your question now. Thank you.
My name's Kenneth Lee and I'm a concerned resident of Clackheaton. I think that the Red House in Gummersall is a vital part of our history and also heritage, and I feel that it must be preserved. I do not agree with the hard-up councils actually selling assets to bolster their own coffers. And why was the Red House, the asset transfer with a £500,000 private funding and charitable status refused? For those councillors on the chambers who actually voted against, is there any specific reason why it was actually voted against?
Councillor Turner.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't catch your name. Kenneth, right, thanks Kenneth. As you're probably aware, this is on the agenda for later for a full debate on this subject, and many of the points you've raised will be addressed at that point.
Who actually owns the Red House now? And if the Red House was actually sold, who would get the money?
The Red House is owned by the council and sits within corporate landlords part of the council at the moment. Any sale fee would go into the capital plan.
Thank you very much. Next. Welcome to the meeting. Please introduce yourself to members, stating your name and to whom your question is addressed to. You can ask the question now. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Jill Hughes and I'm the prospective parliamentary candidate for the Brexit Party in Batley and Spen. So Gommersall is in my constituency, and I'm here to talk about the Red House Museum, which has great historical and heritage links.
Can we just have the question, please? Thank you. Question. If
Sorry?
you ask the question.
Ask my question.
That's not your question, is it?
Everyone else was talking.
We don't want you to make a speech. If you want to ask a question, just ask the question.
It's not a political speech. It was just
Doesn't matter, love. This is a questions only.
Okay,
so
all right.
Thank you.
Right. My question is, what is the listed auction date for the sale of the Red House, and are you prepared to halt the sale and agree to a full and transparent public inquiry in order to save the Red House and retain our heritage and our history?
Councillor Turner.
I refer to my previous answer. This will be debated in full in a few moments, and you get a lot of your answers. I am aware that you sent an email around. I was on holiday until last night. I will deal with your questions in due course, and I'll respond to you directly, but it may take a little while as I catch up on work after coming back from holiday.
Right.
But we are about to debate it.
Thank you. I'm sorry, my eyesight's not very good. Mr. Graham Turner?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have you got a supplementary? Do you want to ask another question?
Sorry?
Would you like to ask another question?
Well, I think that covers most of my questions, so thank you. I'm sure Mr. Turner will get back to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Following a submission of a petition which exceeded 3,000 signatures in respect of Red House, Gomersall, the petition debate shall now take place. I shall invite the organizer of the petition, Kaz Goodwill, to make a representation to the meeting for a maximum of 5 minutes, and then the council may debate the petition for a maximum of 15 minutes. Thank you.
Well, that was a bit worrying. I thought I'd lost my place there. Right. I'm proud to be here to talk about a petition for Red House. 4,500 people signed a petition in a matter of 5 weeks. 1,000 of those in that first week. 1,000 of those people are people that put you here in this chamber, and they want you to stand up for them, to save Red House. And strangely enough, 1,000 people signed who were disallowed because they signed from abroad. Because this isn't just a local heritage site, it's an international heritage site. We're not expecting you to reopen Red House, but we, the Red House Heritage Group, wish to take over Red House in some form or another and work with Kirklees to save and develop this wonderful heritage resource. Why should we save Red House? Why shouldn't we build on it? Oh, it's only an old building, isn't it? Well, there are 5 very good reasons why we need to keep this heritage site. Dr. Stephen Corns, former curator and university lecturer of industrial history, explains. Many learned professors say they cannot really understand why the Industrial Revolution took place. Red House is a perfect time capsule that demonstrates exactly how it happened. The Taylor family owned the site for nearly 400 years. They were yeoman farmers. That means they didn't rent their land, they owned it. And they diversified, as a lot of our farmers diversify. They diversified into wool making, spinning, weaving, fulling, dyeing. Eventually, they got to the point where they needed to build a factory, and the Hunsworth factory was built nearby. In other words, Red House is a perfect blueprint for the development of the wool trade that built this town hall, that built those wonderful buildings in Huddersfield and Dewsbury and other surrounding areas. And underneath Red House, we are seriously told there is a serious amount of industrial archaeology. The second most important reason why we need to save Red House is the Bronte connection. In case you haven't noticed, the world is Bronte mad. Every detail of their lives and their work is under scrutiny. Red House just happens to be the second most important Bronte site globally, next to Haworth. Charlotte Bronte's school friend, Mary Taylor, lived here, and Charlotte visited often. Charlotte's second most important book, Shirley, was written about Red House and the Taylor family. Red House was an inspiration to both Charlotte and Anne Bronte. And then the third most important reason is Mary Taylor herself, a woman 200 years ahead of her time, a strong feminist. Mary thought women should be allowed to reach their full potential. She went to New Zealand, where she set up a successful business and later returned to Gomersall. A few weeks ago, I received an email from a New Zealand historian and author. She explained how the Arts Council of New Zealand had granted her 20,000 New Zealand dollars to research and write about Mary Taylor. On Friday, I heard from our respected Spen Valley Civic Society that their application, supported by local councillors to put a blue plaque on Red House honouring Mary Taylor, had been turned down. $20,000 for New Zealand, but no blue plaque for Kirklees. Doesn't that send a message? And then the Luddites, also have strong connections with Red House and the local area. They led the way with others for socialism and trade unionism, and that will have inspired many
You've
of
got
you here
30
today.
seconds left.
Last but not least, John Wesley, a significant part of our local history, and yet the asset team want to tear apart this multi-heritage site, put a road in the rear, destroying any archaeology, to build 5 or 6 houses and to sell off Red House and the barn. There are 200 houses at the back of Red House on the old Burnley site. There are 92 being built down the road. The school opposite will have 100 built
Can you
on them.
wind up now, please? 5
Yes,
minutes
I
ago.
will.
Thank you.
Would another 5 or 6 houses on Red House site make such an important difference to the housing stock? Is it worth destroying this national
Thank you
and
very much.
international site?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kath, thank you very much for coming along this evening. Oh, sorry. Okay, I stand corrected. But thank you very much for coming along this evening and presenting your position with such passion. It's clearly something you're very, very passionate about, the Red House. So as you will no doubt be aware, local government has had to deal with significant budget cuts over the last 9 years due to the policy of austerity. This has meant that we have had to make some very difficult decisions in relation to our spending, to ensure that we meet our statutory required duties and provide vital services for the most vulnerable and those most in need. Like all parts of the council, the budget for the museum service had to be reduced to reflect the near £200 million reduction in the council's overall spending. At the time, officers and myself spent many hours looking at what we could provide as a museum's offer in the light of the reduced budget we had to work with. On the 3rd of October 2016, Cabinet approved a new vision for Culture Kirklees. As part of this new vision, we took the very difficult decision that we would close Red House. At the time, Red House was costing us £14.58 in the form of subsidy per visitor. In the very difficult times local government is under, with rising demand for statutory services in adult social care and children's services, special education needs, etc., such a subsidy was unsustainable. However, I can assure that before we made the final decision to close Red House, we spoke to all those bodies involved in looking after and developing such historical buildings, about taking over the building and protecting its long-term future. Sadly, at that time, all those we approached declined. Nothing would have pleased me more than if we could have found an alternative to closing down Red House. Please believe me when I say that I and Cabinet take no joy in having to make such decisions, and that I only take when all other avenues have been exhausted. After the closure, we rightly did invite offers for a community asset transfer, and we did receive 3 applications, and those were judged against the relevant policy by panel on the 20th of March 2017. All were found not to meet the requirements to move to the next stage of a full application. As part of that process, I did meet with one of the applicants prior to their submission, so every effort was made by myself and officers to try to get a community asset transfer done. As you rightly point out in your petition, one of the bids did miss the relevant criteria by a single point. And whilst it may seem harsh that the bid was rejected, whenever you have a system that requires certain criteria to move forward, sometimes you may just fall the wrong side of it, sometimes you may fall just the right side of it. So we have to have a consistent policy. That has to be consistent, so it's an approach that's fair to all those who may apply for a community asset transfer, and also to the residents of Kirklees who are ultimately the owners of the council's assets. As your petition also rightly points out, and as you mentioned earlier, nobody would dispute the Red House is a beautiful building and they have significant historical value due to its rare connection to the Brontes, etc. And if there had been any other option open to us at the time of the closure, we would have gladly worked with any interested parties to maintain its status as a museum. But as I already stated, we could not find anyone at that time who wished to take on the museum, despite mine and officers' best efforts. Because of this, we have been investigating the potential sale of the building since the 4th of April 2017. However, I will assure you that this is not a done deal, as we have had some inquiries from interested parties recently, and those conversations are ongoing. I promise you this evening that we will not sell the building until we have exhausted all the potential opportunities to either retain the building without a large subsidy or complete a successful asset transfer, or it being taken over by an alternative charity or public body. But any positive outcome can only be achieved if any interested parties talk to us. So I invite anyone, including yourself and your group, and any other organisation, talk to us and let's see if we can find a solution. And that I made the promise we will not sell it until those conversations have been exhausted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Andrew Pinnock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank Kaz for her petition because this highlights an issue which, fortunately, I don't think the council has had too much of a problem with, and that is empty buildings. Empty buildings are a problem because unless you find something to do with these buildings, they've got to be looked after. And I also thank Councillor Turner for his answer, because I think that he has set out very clearly the issues that relate to this building. One of the most important, actually, is that this is a listed building. Councils in charge of listed buildings are, you know, this is a trap in some cases, because and in some other instances it's treated as if it was a millstone, which is understandable in a lot of respects, because dealing with a listed building has lots of responsibilities attached to it. There's no getting away from that. Whilst I'm very pleased to hear what Councillor Turner said about the future for this building, and I appreciate the situation as it is at the moment, what I would like to say as my contribution to this debate is that we should try to leave the length of time that this building is standing empty, and therefore the council has an ongoing responsibility to look after the fabric of it, to a minimum. Now, I don't know whether Councillor Turner mentioned a timescale. I don't think he did, but I'm sure he will appreciate, as everybody else, that we should try and keep this time period to a minimum, because we have a building here that is a gem as far as Kirklees is concerned. I know we have a lot of listed buildings, but this one has particular historical and literary associations which are unique outside Haworth anyway. I think that not enough is made of the Bronte connection to the Spen Valley, which is far more than a lot of people would suspect. Kaz also mentioned the connection with Mary Taylor, who is a very important figure in the history of, well, I was going to say women's emancipation. That's a sort of rather old-fashioned way of looking at it, but of women taking their rightful place in society. So it has importance on a huge number of levels, and I just want to add my weight to a plea to try and get this sorted as soon as possible. And because it's a listed building, this will not be done in a careless way. I know that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor David Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a great deal of history behind the process that's happened in the last few years. And before the decision was made by the Cabinet ward members with quite a lot of local public support did try to suggest ways in which the museum could be saved. However, the decision was made by the Cabinet. We were disappointed that the capital asset transfer that was, well, at least one of them that was prepared with a great deal of work from Councillor Holmes along with local residents was not favourably looked on. This is the one that failed by 1 point. That would actually have involved not just the community asset transfer, but it would have involved about £500,000 of private investment at no cost to the council into a non-profit making company which would have worked alongside the site to incorporate the public hall to keep both buildings going. And I'm sorry that that didn't get through. I do think that with a little bit of flexibility, the Cabinet could have found ways to support that, and it would have been a very good thing for the community. We would like nothing better than it to be retained. If Cabinet has a change of heart, we're very happy to welcome with any work with any local residents that wants to find an alternative use for that particular building. At the moment, up until I heard Councillor Turner's speech, our efforts have been going into try and minimise disruption for local residents in whatever activities would be forthcoming on that site. I have to confess I'm not much of a Bronte fan. Geoffrey Archer's more my cup of tea. But there is one consolation, and that is that whatever happens at Red House, the history will not be lost. The history of that house cannot be lost, and it is a listed building, so it cannot be demolished. Really, I just wish we'd had the emerging support for Red House Museum at the time we really could have needed with it. But there we are. But I would like to ask two questions to Councillor Turner, following on from his reply to the petitioner, which is that, first of all, it's been said that there is going to be proposed house building on the site. Are there any plans to build housing on any part of that site? And following on from his comments about looking about what might happen in the future, will the Cabinet commit to reopening the community asset transfer process as a whole?
Thank you for that. I move that the matters raised within the debate.
It's your discretion to ask you on that now.
A couple of things. You're right, Andrew. It's really difficult when you're trying to put a time limit. And when I was thinking about this afternoon, the problem is if you put a time limit on, as we well know, as debates going in other places in the democratic process, time limits can sometimes be very constricting and work against you. You're right, it is a great two-star list, two-star. It is important it's maintained. And you're right, time is of the essence, really, because you don't want it empty too long, because we all know empty buildings deteriorate. So, yes, but to put a time limit on that also restricts the opportunity. So, you're right, it should be done in a timely manner, but without a time limit, I think. But I think it was dragging on in a couple of years, say, I think we'd have to call a halt. I think it's a conversation I will have with corporate landlord about the fabric of the building and see what we think is a realistic time frame. I think it has to be a realistic time frame. But these things take a lot of getting over the line sometimes. So if we leave them plenty of time to do it, we've more chance of a successful bid or a successful offer to do something with it. But you're right, time is of the essence. Absolutely, if anybody wants to put an asset transfer in, community asset transfer, no problem. We'll review it within the same process as we have done before. We have a policy, lay down procedures. If anybody wants to submit an asset transfer within that framework, more than happy to look at it as we did before. And I take your point, it does seem a bit harsh, as I said before, about being 1 point wrong, but if you have a system whereby you have a set criteria, you can be 1 point this side, you can be 1 point that side. That's just the way life is sometimes. I am not aware of a planning application for any houses on that site. So it's not a change of heart, it's a change. Somebody's come forward. Since that, times have changed slightly. At the time, nobody was interested. Things have changed, and it seems only fair to reflect the change in attitude and people coming forward to express an interest. So not a change of heart, it's being flexible and trying to help people to find a solution to this problem.
Thank you, Councillor Turner, and thank you, Kaz, for coming and doing the representation. Thank you. No, you're not. Thank you. Thank you. Item 9, to receive for information the minutes of the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. The minutes are for noting. Are there any comments or questions regarding the minutes? Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think in receiving the minutes of West Yorkshire Combined Authority, this council must join with others around the district in paying tribute to Councillor Box, who was mentioned in these meetings, in the minutes, but has left, stepping down from Wakefield for other pastures. Peter has been the leader of Wakefield for 21 years, and it's interesting that on going to a new job, he's talking about transparency and openness. When he chaired a meeting of the West Yorkshire Investment Committee recently, and I went and asked to speak, he wasn't then interested in transparency or openness. He told me that I couldn't speak on a matter of importance to Kirklees. So I'm pleased to see that he's had the Damascene conversion. But we must also look at other matters in here, again, with transparency and openness. We had a deputation today talking about a road scheme. And on page 23 of the papers, we see reference to another road scheme in Kirklees, Murfield-Dewsbury-Leeds, a scheme which is progressing through West Yorkshire, receiving more money for development. It affects your ward as well as mine, Mr. Mayor, and I'm sure you're concerned about it, but we've had no plans on where this road scheme will go. Councillor McBride may well say, like he did to the residents, that it'll have massive and positive impacts, but without any plans and without any data, how can anybody know the benefit or disbenefit of these plans? The sooner we start to get proper plans with transport data, air quality impacts and everything else, the better it will be, both for this scheme and also the one which the residents mentioned earlier, the Cooper Bridge bypass, which I wholeheartedly support their concerns about the destruction of the ancient woodland and the Kirklees estate. It's somewhat ironic, Mr. Mayor, that we talk about the destruction of trees on the Kirklees estate, when for the benefit of the webcast and those who may not be from around here, it's not within the Kirklees borough, but within our neighbouring Calderdale borough. Always a strange one, is that, isn't it? But the other thing about transparency and openness, which has come out again this week about West Yorkshire Combined Authority, is when our own leader has been saying that he signed a letter seeking devolution and more responsibility from the government. It's devolution to an unelected and unaccountable body. Currently, we have a leaders board, we are told by reading the reports in the media, that meets in private, to which nobody sees what happens. The further regional leaders board will be equally so. Anybody which meets and makes decisions should be fully accountable. And I refer again to comments I've made in the past, that I fully support what Tony Benn once said: you should never give power to anybody that you couldn't vote out of office. On accountability and openness, Mr. Mayor, may I pay tribute and thank Councillor McBride for taking the time to apologise to me. Yeah, I know, I must pay tribute. Councillor McBride apologised because he made a mistake, Mr. Mayor. He told Cabinet and the wider webcast that a decision on the change to the Cooper Bridge bypass had been made in a Cabinet meeting. None of the Cabinet picked him up on it, but when I questioned it, Councillor McBride kindly said that no such meeting had taken place. So may I thank him now for his openness, and now can we have the Cooper Bridge bypass coming back to a proper Cabinet meeting for a decision on the future? Because when you say to the residents that no decision has been made on the Cooper Bridge bypass, the three options that we have before us all show the same destruction to that area. So whichever of the three options are chosen, it's showing the same effect. So we need that to come back, and I think we need a rethink of this to look at the benefits. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Councillor Walker? Can we just keep to the minutes, please? You know, we're talking about the minutes here, not anything else.
Thank you. Right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also going to talk about the transport meeting, actually the first one that's on page 9 and 10. I welcome the fact that Richard George did come to talk to a meeting at Wicker, and it was a public meeting that was open for people to attend or to watch online. I am, however, very concerned that the comment made by Councillor Blake about concerns regarding the lack of accountability in decision-making about what's happening with our railways, that type of problem has had a serious effect in Kirklees. The government made the decision to lop off £1 billion from the initial plans for Transpennine upgrade, which would have meant electrification of the whole line. They've cancelled that. There's no electrification between Huddersfield and Staley Bridge. As a result of that, no improvement to the track. As a result of that, the serious problem of lack of disability access, particularly at Marsden Station, but also at Slathwaite Station, has not been addressed. What had happened earlier was that we'd been prevented from bidding for funding to address this problem because we were told it was going to be addressed by the Transpennine upgrade. I've raised this concern directly with Councillor Blake because I feel that at the edge of empire, that's what it feels like in an area like Combe Valley. There has been no consultation with local people, and our voice is not listened to in terms of access for people who wish to use the railway. And if anybody's familiar with the station, it is so bad that it's not just people in wheelchairs or fairly severely disabled, people with things like buggies with children also cannot access the trains. So I hope going forward that Wicker will work with us as a council and local campaigners to address this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Munro.
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to say a few words in relation to these minutes. On the one hand, West Yorkshire Combined Authority have declared a strong commitment to tackle climate change and have declared a climate emergency and will consider in all their reports the impacts of its decisions on the climate emergency agenda. Yet, on the other hand, in agenda item 20, we note the Leeds City region are planning to financially support transport links to Leeds Bradford Airport aimed at a possible expansion of the airport. This is inconsistent with the declaration made by the Combined Authority, who should declare their declaration of a climate emergency in every single decision they make. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Smage.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The minutes on page 21 of the papers about the South East Bradford Link Road. Could Councillor McBride please undertake to ensure that Birstall and Berkshire, I'm going to get my words out, ward councillors are kept fully informed of everything that Kirklees knows. This link road will come out at the junction of 3 authorities, and at the roundabout that will be affected, one of the roads off is down to a primary school. What we don't want is extra traffic coming through Berkshire. It also will affect junction 27 as well, because it will put extra traffic through there, and that is already busy with the motorway and the junction 27 retail park. So we need to ensure that all the roads in Kirklees are looked at as to the impacts of that South East Link Road, because Bradford are not keeping us informed. So if Councillor McBride can undertake to ensure that happens. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Andrew Cooper.
Yeah, I've got these minutes very carefully, and on page 24 of the minutes, there's a resolution. It's about CO2 reduction, it's about commitments and activity by the Combined Authority. And it says a number of quite positive things, but there's this thing which I have concerns about, really. That the future Combined Authority will comment on the impact any decision that they make will have on the climate emergency agenda. And that's not the same as saying, measure the impact, see what the issues are with the impact, say whether we've actually decided not to pursue a particular project, whatever that project might be. So simply commenting, I can imagine some of the comments that could be made. But that's not strong enough. We actually need to see transparency. We talk about transparency, the West Yorkshire Combined Authority here. I think we ought to have a say from here on how they actually make those decisions, how they judge them. How do we know that West Yorkshire Combined Authority are making decisions which affect us all on climate change, and that they've done that rigorously and done it in a way that we can improve? I mean, we could rely on the two members who go there, but perhaps it would be better if all members of this council were able to have an insight and judgment into that.
Thank you for that. Councillor Andrew Pinnock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I should be brief. There are issues in here which are of extreme importance to people in this area and around, actually. One of them, Councillor Walker emphasised just now. And Councillor Cooper has also mentioned the stuff relating to the airport. The trouble is, if you look at the dates of these meetings, they're both in June, and we're now in October. I do think that quite a bit could have happened between then and now to resolve some of the things, and indeed, actually, in here, there is a resolution about the road that Martin Bulk was going on about just now. So something is going to happen there by the look of it. I would like to know if we can have these minutes much more quickly. Otherwise, we are in danger of having a debate on something that is history.
Thank you. Councillor McBride.
I'll just, for starters, say that the representatives on various bodies, whether it's the Leaders Board or the representatives on various committees, on panels, I think do their best to widen the scope of accountability and information to be provided by the public. But I'm really pleased that so many people are now in tune with my view about the nature of so-called devolution. It's a system that's been imposed on us. We're working the system as effectively as we can. So the government has shown indifference about the geography, so long as you go with a system that they approve of. It does not make for accountability. I believe from day one, and still do, and I'll draw your attention to a resolution you passed many times, years ago, which talked about if we have total devolved power, it should involve a representative body. Believe me, I have an experience of such a body. It was called the West Yorkshire County Council. The responsibilities were so great, it was necessary to have a large number of representatives to give the very qualities that you are now requiring of this body. And you're quite right to ask of it. And the public more widely. And when you go as far as the devolved powers for the North to determine all transport provision, there are 11 people deciding that. Is that accountability? It is nonsense. So hopefully, as more devolved proposals are brought forward by this government, we will be exacting some accountability in these terms and be asking the same government, will you justify and rationalise what is the geography, what is the representation, and what is the accountability? Because believe me, I will remind this council of this conversation and try to reintroduce it at that appropriate moment. I'm very pleased to have had this debate.
Thank you, Councillor McBride. Can we move on to item 10 now, page 27. Budget strategy update, Councillor Turner.
Thank you. Cabinet is required under financial procedure rules to submit a provisional budget strategy in October each year. And this is the report we have before us this evening. Currently, more detailed work is currently ongoing as Cabinet prepares the final budget proposals for discussion at the February Budget Council. As members will be aware, the Chancellor announced a one-year spending settlement several weeks ago. And this early settlement has allowed work to begin earlier than usual on next year's budget, which is to be welcomed. However, it is only a one-year settlement, which does mean that we can't plan for future years in any great detail. Excuse me. The Council has promised to provide more funding for adult social care to be welcomed, but we do need a longer-term solution to the growing demands placed on all local authorities by growing adult social care costs. I do hope that at some point before the next budget round, we will see the long-awaited green paper on adult social care. I cautiously welcome the increase in funding for the high needs to address the funding pressures all local authorities have seen over the last few years. However, the reason I am cautious is that we have yet to receive the final figure of how much we are to receive of the £700 million promised by the Chancellor. Once we have that figure, it will be clearer how we manage the growing demand in high needs and how we address the significant current overspend. Mr Mayor, I remove that the recommendations on page 28, as agreed at the Cabinet meeting of the 8th of October 2019, be approved.
Is that seconded? Thank you. Are there any comments on this matter? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I sort of rise to welcome the report and to acknowledge as Graham has already said, the early spending round announcements by the Chancellor, which have allocated approximately around additional £9 million into our budgets for the forthcoming year. But I also agree with him that what actually is needed is a longer term funding settlement, and I welcome the commitment by the Chancellor to a multi-year spending review in 2020, although I think, as we all know in this chamber, who knows what government will have in 2020. But that aside, if this council is to effectively plan and to look at those key cost pressure areas, as mentioned, adult social care, children's services, high needs immediately come to mind. There needs to be a longer term funding settlement so you can plan more strategically rather than try and respond to a one year after one year after 1 year. I also think it's appropriate at this point to recognise the work that the officers have been doing. Within this report, we got confirmation that at Q1 there was a projected overspend of the year of £2 million against an overall budget of just under 290 million, which is a much smaller projected overspend at Q1 than we've had for a number of years, and shows that officers are getting to terms with the budgets. And I think they deserve some recognition for the good work that's being done in there as well. So as I say, I rise to welcome the report and look forward to further engagements on the budget process in due course. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Matt. I notice with interest that my full name is up there now. No, you must all perish to save my embarrassment. Thank you. So, yes, like the two previous speakers, I welcome the report. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there. There's a lot of hard work gone into it, especially by officers who, as Councillor Taylor said, have really examined how to bring those quarter-one differences back into line throughout the rest of the year. And it's anticipated that our directorates will have to do a lot of work to try and bring that back down again, as they do most years. Just a couple of comments then. It's a budget refresh, so I'm not going to revisit some of the larger themes that we might do in an ordinary budget. Couple of things to notice. Start small. The car parking review hasn't gone away, and nor should it. It's a vital part of the toolbox when we shape traffic movements and visit towns. And as papers that came to scrutiny mentioned, they could be part of a way to tackle some of our green issues, those that's on everybody's agenda at the moment. The report mentions a potential 1.1 million in car parking revenue, which is a tempting figure. I just give a word of caution, though, that car parking is not like a green loyalty card, where the more you charge, the greener we get. Proper thought needs to be given to environmental concerns, promoting footfall of businesses, and working with residents to make sure that a wider transport plan that benefits them and that they enjoy. Let's face it, we want to enjoy those things. I said this was small. It's kind of not. It's getting this wrong, and you'll lose the public trust in the wider aims of the council and all of those bigger ambitions that are tied up with this kind of at one end of it. The other thing I'd mention is the scary-looking bit on page 51, and that's the graph. It's the top of the page is a graph. I know it's all from assumptions and probabilities, But the graph is what Geoffrey Boycott would call the corridor of uncertainty. The variables are funding reviews and Brexit, but I noticed that while the top and bottom figures have dropped, I think that top figure was 46 million at one point, either last year or the year before, and 6 million on the lower end. The top and bottom figures have dropped. The margin is still over 30 million. It gives you some idea of the uncertainty at work when we're trying to make a budget at this current time. So that's the range going forward to 22-23. If we look at where the period starts at 2021, there's another range of 3.6 million to 8.9 million pounds adrift. Now, I think that should well concern the administration when it's making its budget plans for February. Some serious thought needs to go into how we address that so we're not starting that period at that position. I'll end my comments by looking at 2.1, 6.5, I think I've got that right, and reminding everybody that a third of the government's promise of 1.5 billion nationally to stable the adult social care situation is again made up of permission to tax our residents a further 2% on top of the council tax, irrespective of their ability to pay. I'm not one to quote Bob Geldof very often, but why can't they just give us the money? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lukin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a quick comment on strategy in relation to council tax setting. The council tax in the last few years, I understand, has gone up well over 20% when you're taking adult social care precepts into account. And I fully understand the pressures and the austerity measures taken by government that have contributed to this. However, in Dewsbury, there's a significant proportion of the population, approaching 30%, maybe over 30%, that has financial worries, which, adversely impacts their mental health and well-being. So when deciding on the strategy for council tax setting, I'd urge Cabinet to resist the temptation just to go for the maximum allowed and to fully consider the adverse impact on residents' mental health and well-being from the squeeze, the financial squeeze caused by the escalation in council tax bills.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, but I can't resist the urge for being a bit facetious, because I'm just in that kind of mood today. On Appendix H, under the spending review, there's a sentence there that says, Mr. Javid says that day-to-day spending will increase by 13.8 billion next year. Please don't read that as, Mr. Javid says that spending will increase by 13.8 billion day-to-day next year, because even Mr. Corbyn couldn't come up with a money tree that big.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
We like an odd typo in a report of this length. A couple of points referring to the car park, and thanks Councillor Taylor for his kind words about the work that officers do. As you will know, it's a huge job putting a budget together and getting the strategy in place. And he's right to point out that the projected overspend is less than at this time last year and the previous few years. And I'm confident that by the end of the year we'll come on at a balanced budget or probably a little bit of an underspend aim. You there? So hopefully we'll be all right. I'd say we're doing better than we have done in previous years. Car parking, it's right that we constantly review this because it does impact on how people shop, how people move around the area, and that will be picked up by the relevant portfolio holder, and that will feed through the budget process. The comment by Councillor Lukic about raising council tax, let's be honest, nobody likes to pay more tax than they need to. Nobody likes to raise taxes. I don't want to pay any more than necessary. But unfortunately, we have a certain amount of statutory duties, and the only way we can afford to do that is if we raise the required capital revenue, through council tax. If we'd perhaps had the green paper either last year or the year before on adult social care, we perhaps wouldn't be looking at the potential of a 2% increase. It's been delayed so long now, it's just dragging on far too long. As Councillor Taylor alluded to, even he agrees we need to address this issue. So until those issues are addressed, we will continue to review how much we raise council tax by and whether we do implement the 2% social care tax that's been implied by the government that we should consider doing.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Right, I think we've got no more speakers. Can we have a show of hands for this item to vote for, please? All in favour? Right, we'll do it on the council. If you would like to press your buttons, please. Thank you. Right, just 1 minute. We're a bit slow here. Right, can you push your buttons now? Thank you. Yeah, that's carried. Thank you. Come on, calm down everybody now. Item 11, page 87, scrutiny annual report. Hello, can you calm down everybody? Item 11, page 87, scrutiny annual report, 2018-2019. Councillor Smage.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I rise to propose that the Council receive and note the annual report for 18-19. It is a little bit strange presenting the report for last year, but I do want to thank Julie for her work as Chair of Scrutiny, thank the lead members from last year and all councillors and co-optees that formed the various panels. I just want to pick out a few items from the annual report, which is in your papers. So for the Management Committee, we looked at domestic abuse and we felt that the visibility of information in communities to be able to identify where to go for support had declined over recent years, and stressed that the quality of information accessed on the Council's website was easily accessible and up to date, and the information was subsequently updated. The committee also contributed to the development of a revised domestic abuse strategy. The committee was concerned about an insufficiency of perpetrator programmes and the lack of clarity about funding for this area from the Police and Crime Commissioner, and the chair of the committee raised this issue at a scrutiny liaison meeting with the Police and Crime panel. Economy and Neighbourhoods considered several draft strategies throughout the year, including housing and preventing homelessness and rough sleeping. Pre-decision scrutiny was part of the work to enable the panel to influence and comment on strategic proposals at an early stage. For corporate, the panel made a number of recommendations throughout the year to identify actions to contribute towards strong financial management authority, and also looked at procurement, which included a workshop to increase knowledge of the role and approach to procurement. On the joint health scrutiny side of things, we continued to meet with Wakefield for the Kirklees and Wakefield scrutiny panel, scrutinising the changes and to meeting the challenge in Mid Yorkshire Trust. The Calderdale and Kirklees panel continues to meet. There will be a series of meetings coming up. In fact, there's one on Friday. The West Yorkshire Councils are establishing a new mandatory JOSC to look at the proposed changes in vascular services that NHS England commission, and it's proposed that this will be jointly chaired by Kirklees and Calderdale. Councillor Zaman will update on ambulatory care as far as health is concerned, followed by Councillor Marchington for the children's. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper?
Just
1 minute. Okay. Second. Who's seconding?
No, Councillor Cooper's seconding, but Councillor Zaman
Right, okay. Sorry about that. Councillor Zaman.
In 2018, the panel was made aware that the ambulatory emergency care unit at Dewsbury District Hospital had closed, and until further notice, ambulatory care facilities will be provided at the Pinderfields Hospital site. During the year, the panel had 2 meetings with representatives from Mid-Yorkshire, and it was clear from the discussions that it could be several years before the facility in Dewsbury would be reopened. Because the position was unlikely to be resolved in the short term and the Trust was continuing to experience workforce challenges, the panel was told that the Trust was recommending that the centralised service model located in Pinderfields should be maintained. As a result of these discussions, the panel agreed that a more detailed scrutiny of the ambulatory emergency care services was required and to approach Wakefield Scrutiny Committee to see if they wish to participate in the review of the AA services. Wakefield Scrutiny agreed to be involved in the review, and a working group comprising of 3 representatives from the authority was established. In June this year, the Kirklees and Wakefield's joint ambulatory emergency care working group visited Pinderfields Hospital. It was a comprehensive visit to Pinderfields that included a discussion with key members of the Trust, senior management team and clinicians. The tour of the hospital also included a visit to the ambulatory emergency care and frailty units and a number of key supporting services. As a result of the visit, the working group have agreed to visit Dewsbury Hospital to see the provision of services offered on the Dewsbury site. This will allow members to get a good understanding of the overall provision supporting the same-day emergency care services across both sites and the various pathways of care that patients from North Kirklees can access.
Thank you, Councillor Zaman. Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to start off by thanking members of the Children's Panel last year, in particular Councillor Burke, who was a lead member, but also to express thanks to Dale O'Neill, who's a voluntary co-optee, who has continued her work on the panel this year and has provided some consistency. The panel highlights are before you. I think the one I would like to speak about is elective home education, a significant ad hoc piece of work that the panel undertook last year. We've now collected our final pieces of evidence, and we're going to finalise the report and hope that will be going to Cabinet relatively in the near future. It's very interesting as part of that to actually speak to Fiona Nicholson, who runs the Ed Yourself website, providing support to those who choose to electively home educate their children, but also parents. And they raised some important issues about how they engage with the services that are provided by the council. And I think it's important as well looking into some of the concerns that people have about elective home education, to recognise the choice that people make and how we should be supporting parents who choose to do this for a variety of reasons. And I think you'll find when we get the report coming back through Cabinet and to Council, it'll be interesting. We've recently had some more guidance from government, and we'll be including that in the report. I think really the major thing for us to report back to Council is the way ahead, the year ahead. We had quite a long key discussion item on children's services at the last Council meeting. I think one of the comments I would have wanted to make at that stage is actually some of the improvements I've seen in that. As part of our roles, Children's Scrutiny, we were observing some of the panels, and I observed the Corporate Parenting Board last time, chaired by Councillor Kendrick. And it was really pleasing to see the changes that I perceive had happened in the last 2 to 3 years with the council acting its role as corporate parent. It's really impressed to see the way that looking at the information about looked after children was handled and scrutinised at that panel there. And what it gave for me as a lead member for Children's Scrutiny was actually to say, well, actually some of that work's going on elsewhere, and we can confirm that. And we don't necessarily need to be repeating looking at data in our panel. One of the 3 areas that we want to look at in the succeeding years, and some of these are cross-cutting, is about how we scrutinise partnership working. We know as a local authority in a lot of areas, but particularly when working with children and young people, we can't do everything ourselves. We might be working with health services, we might be working with the police, we might be working with voluntary and community sector organisations. And we need to make sure that the contribution that all of those partners make to the outcomes we all want for our children, it's done as effectively as possible. So we'll be looking at that. And I'm sure that some of that work will help with the scrutinising of partnership working in the other scrutiny panels. I think the other thing which is cross-cutting, it might help all of us, is how data is used and how it's collected. We sometimes have lots of information, but what is that information telling us? Is it telling us the right thing? And we're going to be looking at that in the following year. And the other thing, I think, it's one of the things that children and young people's scrutiny panels know is about visits to various bits of activity that are going on. I know one of the things that we've done before is actually meeting looked after children. It was fascinating listening to their perspectives on what it was like to be looked after. I know Councillor Kendrick won't mind about when she's been on fostering panel. A number of councils have been on fostering panel, and their engagement with children in foster care and foster carers, and about that's really shaped the decisions you've made in the future. What we want to do as a panel is make sure that the visits we're doing, it's not just following things up that have already happened, but actually looking at how they feed into the scrutiny of the work we do. So we want to do visits to officers who are making decisions, to speak to young people, to carers in various situations, and use that as evidence gathering when we get reports coming through to committee, to panel, to confirm some of the information we've gotten forward, but also shape that. So again, thank you to all the members of the panel and to the voluntary co-optees and everybody who's given evidence to the panel over the last 12 months and in the following 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Cooper?
Yeah, I just formally second the report.
Thank you. Councillor David Hall.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Could I also pass on my thanks to the independent co-opted members who do a fantastic job on scrutiny. We must remember that the scrutiny function is a vital part of the Cabinet model that we adopted in 2002, and therefore we must treasure it really and all support it. And I'm really pleased to see some of the stuff in these reports. It's good stuff, and I really commend it. One little thing which I think would bring home how precious scrutiny is, which is that in the report there's lots of outcomes listed, and a lot of them are actually that scrutiny recommended something. And it would be really handy if as this recommendation was listed, we could also know, was the recommendation accepted by Cabinet? Has the recommendation been carried out by Cabinet? And what difference did it actually make to the people whose lives we're trying to improve by having the scrutiny model?
Thank you for that. Right of reply?
We'll look at what Councillor Hall has suggested.
Oh, okay, thank you for that. Please can we receive and note the scrutiny annual report, and can we show of hands for supporting? Yeah, thank you. As carried. Thank you. Item 12, written questions to the leader, cabinet members, chairs of committees and nominated spokesperson. A written schedule of submitted questions has been circulated. I will now invite members to ask their question in turn. The appropriate member will respond. One supplementary question to each submitted question is permitted. Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's a question for Councillor Walker, Rob Walker. Huddersfield Daily Examiner online website of 9th of October. The headline, Council deny new playground plan is a U-turn on controversial scheme, and cites Councillor Walker stating, I am against the closure of any parks. These changes will only be introduced where residents want them. Will Councillor Walker confirm to Council that these remarks apply to all Kirklees play areas within the borough and mean that in the absence of calls for change from local communities, the default council position is no change to current provisions.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Right, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Armour's quite good, I think, at slotting a couple of questions into one, so I will try and answer both of them. Right, firstly, the article of the 9th of October did sort of implicitly question the council's commitment to not closing any of our parks. Can I reiterate that a park would only be closed if there's a very clear call from the community to do so? Second part of the question was about whether or not, in the absence of any clear call from a community, what would we do about a park? And the answer to that really is that if there is no expressed desire to change things, then the parks team would carry out the regular checks on the play equipment and the general environment of the park. It's inevitable that at some point, items of play equipment may need to be replaced or refurbished. There is no secret plan to spirit away equipment in the dead of winter, as the Examiner article suggests. And we would look at each park and ensure that it maintains its play value. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Armour, supplementary.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. We all know the Examiner is totally infallible and the font of all wisdom. Sorry. But just to be clear, does this mean that the council employees, officers, will be adopting a reactionary position rather than proactively looking to persuade communities to seek change?
Councillor Walker.
No, anything but. I think what we need to do now is to have a proactive approach, which is all about working with communities. And all of us as councillors, I think, have got a really important role to play in that. We know our communities best, and the Parks team, and hopefully myself, need to work with councillors and through you to identify who the key people are in particular communities when we're making the decisions about the future of each park. And I'll return to that in the answer to some of the later questions.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Armour.
Yes, thank you. Staying on the theme, and I would just point out, in clarification, I spoke about council officers, not council members, in my supplementary, the last question. In the context of play areas, it is the case that the council is seeking to establish various friends of groups. Given that such groups are often small in number, what weight will be given to their views on the future of individual local play areas?
Councillor Walker.
Okay, there's probably, again, a couple of questions buried in that. The key point, that was the end of my last answer, is that any changes to play areas will only be made in consultation with both ward councillors and communities. We care very much about the views of local people. Friends of groups can act as the voice of many communities and are very important in part of making sure we get things right for people. There will be just one of many ways, though, in which we will engage with the community. I know that not all play areas have established friends of groups that are there to articulate the local opinion and activity. If ward councillors or members of a community wish to establish such groups, there are officers in place to provide such support. And I have worked with them along with my fellow ward councillors within my own ward and found that a very satisfactory way forward. I would expect ward councillors may be involved in such activity, and I would be very happy to discuss that with them. So if anybody wants to come along and have a chat with me about help setting up friends groups in your area, or if you want to go directly to the appropriate officers, please do that. I know from experience that in some cases there can be differences of opinion within a community about a particular park. This again is a situation where I would hope ward councillors will help in identifying key stakeholders and in helping to judge the most appropriate way forward for the benefit of the community. So that kind of comes back to your point about the weighting given to different voices. I think we do need to work with the people who know the communities best, which in many cases is the ward councillors. Thank you.
Supplementary?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Next question, Councillor Monroe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my question is, please can you confirm the council will fund free transport for all displaced pupils at ACS Secondary who are forced to travel further afield to other schools outside Almonbury Ward until they leave secondary school at the end of year 11? Thank you.
Councillor Pattison.
Thank you. It's a shame that Councillor Munro was not able to attend the briefings that were offered to the ward councillors of Almonbury to discuss these issues going forward as a result of the closure of Almonbury Community School. So at this moment in time, I can only give her the same response to this question that she received last week at the Children's Scrutiny Panel, and that is that transport, where applicable, will just be one of a number of considerations taken into account to support the smooth transition for all the pupils of Almonbury Community School. No child currently at the school will be forced to go to any particular school when the school closes in August 2020. There can be no blanket policy that can be applied on any aspect of the future arrangements. And as has been said many times, officers from the authority and school staff will discuss with each family and household what their preferences and their needs are and the family circumstances that they find themselves in. All that will be taken into account when allocating school places. And this will be done on a one-to-one basis for the families in the first instance.
Supplementary?
I just wanted to know if you can confirm any dates, and I just wanted to say.
Stand up, please.
Sorry, and I just wanted to say that I did send in my apologies. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, I know you sent apologies, and I did say it was a shame that you couldn't make them. Well, in terms of a date, I am very pleased to be able to say that tomorrow morning we will be contacting all the staff at the school, all the parents and the pupils in the school to tell them what the arrangements that we have been able to, or officers have been able to negotiate with the 3 local schools and their governing bodies.
Can we have a bit quiet on that side, please? There's somebody, you've asked a question from that side and somebody's replying. So, just give a bit of respect to the members who stand up. It's really hard to stand up and talk. So thank you very much. If you keep a bit of a silence that side, thank you.
So there are some exciting opportunities for the pupils of Almonbury Community School going forward. And we will be in a position tomorrow morning to share those with them.
Thank you. Right, we're on to question 4. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question for the Cabinet Member for Culture and Environment, Councillor Walker. Residents of high flats and surrounding areas have raised concerns with me about visitors to the Yummy Yorkshire Ice Cream Parlour and restaurant taking wrong turns and ending up down private roads and generally becoming lost around the village. This seems to be a particular problem for visitors coming from the north because the restaurant for them is actually past the village. Would it be possible to place a brown tourist information sign on one of the lampposts on the approach to the village, advising that there is still a mile or thereabouts to go to the restaurant?
Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Councillor Watson's concern for the local business, their customers and the local community is admirable. Unfortunately, can I advise him that there is a guidance document produced by Highways for both brown and black and white signs. This suggests that brown tourist information signs can only be used on the highway to direct the drivers to a tourist destination. And Yumi, Yorkshire does not meet this definition as outlined by the government. The department has, in 2016, published guidance on traffic signs and general directions. So unfortunately, the council does not feel at this stage it's able to provide this type of signing from the highway for this particular establishment.
Thank you. Councillor Watson, supplementary.
Yes, sir, thank you. Given that the criteria there seems to be that the signage can't be provided because it's not a tourist destination, what's the logic behind the sign for the 3 acres at Shepley and the one down at Sisset for the garden centre at Shelley?
Councillor Walker.
Okay. Yeah. I would be very happy to look at that with him. I've actually brought along a copy of the document and some of the guidance in there. It'd be interesting also to explore government guidance. So I will be happy to look at this further and look at the difference between some of these establishments. It does make some distinctions about the scale of attractions and so on. But yeah, it's worth further discussion.
Thank you. Question 5, Councillor Watson again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What process or procedures are in place, and this again is for Councillor Walker, what process or procedures are in place to ensure the maintenance of road signs and road markings?
Councillor Walker again.
Okay. I'll start off with road markings. For road markings, the classified roads are visited annually, and refreshing of the lining is prioritised based on condition. All other lining is reviewed and works ordered, if required, when faded or missing road markings are reported by the safety inspection team, by councillors, members of the public, or when identified by the officers as they drive the network as part of their day-to-day duties. And certainly my own ward, I know from experience, all of those things have happened which have led to road markings being replaced. For road signs, the majority of signs requiring works are reported again by councillors, members of the public, with others reported via safety inspections as a result of damage by third parties such as crashes, as well as officers driving the network. These damaged, faded or missing signs are dealt with on an on-risk-based approach to determine the timescale for repair. And indeed, if the sign needs to be replaced at all, if not now required, it will be removed to reduce street clutter. Mandatory signs such as speed limits, stop, give way signs are prioritised for repair replacement ahead of direction signs, just as an example of how prioritisation would take place. The council also seeks to recover the costs of repairs of signs that have been damaged by third parties. In both cases, if feasible, when undertaking other highway schemes, work on these things, on both the lining and on the signs, will be undertaken at the same time to reduce costs.
Councillor Watson.
Possible to have copies of the last inspection reports for both signs and road markings in Denby Dale?
Councillor Walker.
Right. Sorry, would you mind repeating that? Sorry, I'm a little bit deaf.
You just said that there were annual inspection reports.
Yes.
I think in relation to road markings and signs.
Yes.
Could I possibly get copies of the last reports?
Right, I will endeavour to get those from the requisite officers and supply them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. We're on to question 6. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is one for the Cabinet Member for Greener Kirklees, Councillor Mather. In April of this year, I came across a pile of fly-tipped rubbish on Broadstone Road at Bird's Edge, just before the junction with Bird's Edge Lane. I took the time to have a good rummage through it, and in amongst the rubbish were mortgage statements giving the name of a specific individual and a property address in Leeds. There were also some credit card payment receipts from a supermarket in the same area of Leeds, which showed the part of the credit card number used for the purchases, and copies of these documents were passed to the council officers. Could the Cabinet member please let me know what explanation was given by that individual named on the mortgage statements as to how their personal documents came to be dumped amongst a pile of detritus in the lanes in rural Kirklees?
Councillor Mather.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Inquiries at this address established that the person named in the documentation vacated the property late 2018. Leeds City Council did not have a forwarding address, so we were unable to contact the individual to establish how their documentation came to be fly-tipped in Kirklees. As you know, I have said previously that in this council, in Kirklees, we have a zero tolerance policy to fly tipping. Fly tipping is a serious offence, and those responsible are selfish and lazy, and it is not to be tolerated. And our fantastic team do investigate offences and regularly prosecute people responsible. Sometimes, however, tracking the rubbish to an individual is complicated, but we always do everything in our power to find those responsible to prosecute. So, for example, this last month in September, we had 2 successful prosecutions in the Magistrates' Court for fly tipping, and it was considerable fines that they faced. We also issued 6 penalty notices for littering from motor vehicles. We issued 6 penalty notices face-to-face for individuals who were found to be littering. And every month, the team is doing a really fantastic job, and they need to be applauded because it does take time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
No, I'd just like to pass on my thanks to the officers for following that up. That's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say that really what people need to take away with them is that it's about our villages, our towns, our district, it's our home that we're cleaning up. So it's our responsibility to ensure precisely what you did in this case by offering us some of the evidence to chase. Thank you.
Thank you. We're on question 7. What time is it? How many minutes to go? 12 minutes, right, okay. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is another one for Councillor Walker. Last year I received a particularly damning email from a resident in Denbydale Ward about the length of time between black bin collections over the Christmas break. Please could the Cabinet member advise when the last black bin collections will be for Christmas for Bird's Edge, Upper Cumberworth, Lower Cumberworth, Denbydale, Skelmanthorpe, Clayton West, Sisset, Upper Denby and Emley. And then please also advise when the first black bin collections will be after Christmas for each of these villages. Thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Right, okay. We fully understand the importance of this issue to all local residents, wherever they live. We're currently in discussion with staff and the unions about the arrangements for this Christmas holidays. Those arrangements will shortly be finalised. Once they are finalised, which hopefully will be over the next few weeks, those arrangements will be agreed and then they will be shared with local members and residents. So that will not just be for the residents of your particular ward, but everybody within Kirklees.
Thank you.
Councillor Watson? Is no supplementary, no? Okay.
Mr Mayor, can I, since we're getting close to the end of time, can I propose that we suspend that standing order so we can get through the questions, please?
So, are you proposing, who's seconding? Yeah, can we vote by show of hands, please? That's carried. Right, we're on question 8. Councillor Cooper.
Will you be calling for West Yorkshire Combined Authority to withdraw the £100 million of support it is providing for the expansion of Leeds Bradford Airport in the light of the climate emergency that we have now declared. That we and they have declared.
Councillor McBride?
No.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Does that mean that you don't think take the climate emergency seriously? Does that mean that you don't think it's an important thing? Is that something that you think is something that doesn't require a proper response?
Councillor McBride?
The answer again is no, but let me explain. This scheme, the Combined Authority is not funding an expansion of the airport. It's accepted an outline case for the introduction of a link that will enable the creation of a park and ride provision to link the centre of Leeds to the airport, similar to the system that we have at South Parkway, Liverpool, to the John Lennon Airport. So the idea is to take people from private transport, which is hugely congested going to the airport, to public transport. I think the original scheme was entirely by rail until it dawned on the Leeds officers that the topography didn't lend itself. You know, angles of 45 degrees are not appropriate for building railways. However, having learnt that, they now propose a road with a park and ride system. So that is what's approved. I might add that all schemes that go before the West Yorkshire Transport Committee have got to be approved at each stage, and they apply very stringent criteria, which include impact on climate change, impact on carbon. So it will be, subject to those criteria at every stage. I think at the moment it's at the outline business case. It has yet got to go to another stage of approval.
Thank you. We're on to question 9. Councillor Cooper.
Have you considered using the provisions of the European Charter of Local Self-Government that the UK is a signatory of to get a better financial settlement?
Can you press your mic, please?
Have you considered using the provisions of the European Charter of Local Self-Government that the UK is a signatory of to get a better financial settlement from the UK government for Kirklees Council?
Supplementary?
Well, perhaps you should, because it says in the European Charter of Local Self-Government, the protection of financial, which the UK signed up to, the protection of financially weaker local authorities, like Kirklees, calls for the institution of financial equalisation procedures of equivalent measures which are designed to correct the effects of the unequal distribution of potential sources of finance, like from our government, and of the financial burden they support. So that effectively is saying that the UK government has signed up to a treaty. This is not the European Union, this is the Council of Europe.
Question, please.
And so really, shouldn't we be going to the UK government and saying, you've signed up to this, Kirklees is losing out? Correct that. You're in breach of a European Charter.
Councillor McBride.
We're acutely conscious of the funding that the government has provided for this council over the last 9 years, but we've made our views known very adequately through the LGA and SIGOMA, which are the normal channels, where we've lent our voice together with other councillors equally affected to make the point where we're getting an unfair treatment. And if you believe for a minute that Boris Johnson or any of the previous government prime ministers in the last 9 years would have been influenced by what the Council of Europe said, I think you're in cuckoo land. I don't think for a moment that this government will listen to a representation which has no power whatsoever. It's a statement of, of goodwill, as it were, from the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe has no effective power to determine policies anywhere in Europe.
Thank you. We're on question 10. Councillor Cooper.
Okay, let's see if we can get an answer to this one. Can you confirm that the play area on Hallcross Road will no longer have its swings, slides and roundabouts replaced with logs and rocks.
Councillor Walker.
Right, yeah, I'll give you a very blunt answer. Yes, I can confirm that, unless the local residents wish to do that. So the key thing that, as we've mentioned before, is that the future of all our play areas is going to be shaped by the communities that use them. And I gather from the staff within the play area within the council tell me that in your ward at Elm Manor Park, this kind of approach was followed with the participation of the local councillors, and that you worked very closely, the staff worked very closely with local people to try and understand what they wanted in the play area. This was delivered, and that going forward, we're very keen to work with ward councillors. So looking at this park, I would hope the lessons that we learned on Elm Manor will be replicated in the approach to this play area, and that we come out with a play area which is something that local people want, which might have some logs, it might have some swings, it might have climbing frames, whatever.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Cooper, supplementary.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. The reason I asked the question, there was a reason for asking the question. It was because we received this email on the 1st of April from a Kirklees officer about the Hallcross Road play area. It said...
Councillor Cooper, can we get to the question, please, if you don't mind?
Okay. It has initially been identified as a doorstep play space. This means mechanical equipment is replaced with more natural play, such as stones or logs, to provide natural, imaginative play space, but without the liabilities of having mechanical equipment. So, on that basis, for that reason, that was the reason I asked the question, and so I was quite keen to know whether that is no longer the case, and that people on Hallcross Road can rest easy now, and that the council no longer wishes to replace their swings and slides and roundabouts.
Councillor Cooper, is that the question?
It is a question.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have hoped that you would have read the new strategy that went to Cabinet, and I hope that at least I tried to make a very clear statement that things like the categorisation of parks, making it appear decisions have been made before consultation with local people, that will not happen. Each park will be taken on its merits, and the decisions that are made will only be made after discussion with ward councillors and people within the local communities. And I do call on you to help us in that process, making sure that we make the right decisions.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Question 11, Councillor Lukic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a question for Councillor Mather. What plans does the Cabinet have to renovate and extend the CCTV system in Dewsbury Town Centre?
Councillor Mather.
Thank you, Councillor Lukic. Currently, the council is working with partners such as police and councillors to explore where further investment or improvements could be made within Dewsbury. This is part of the wider improvements work that's being undertaken within the town centre that the councillors have been involved in. For example, the planned wholesale replacement of the street lighting within the Ring Road, Dewsbury Town Centre, will greatly improve the colour rendering of CCTV images, leading to sharper images at night time. The new LED lighting will potentially reduce crime and fear of crime at night within the town centre. The LED lanterns have a long life and greater reliability than conventional lanterns, and therefore there will be a reduction in lamp outage. Next year, it will also be part and parcel of a Dewsbury Town Centre blueprint rollout early next year. So all of this will be included if it hasn't been concluded by then.
Supplementary.
Thank you. From the Councillor Mather, from the answer, I didn't really get anything about development of the CCTV system, i.e. the cameras and so on itself. Does that mean the Cabinet does not have plans to develop the CCTV system itself?
Councillor Mather.
It will be part of the overall blueprint that's going to be rolled out, and it will be done in relation to what the councillors and partners are saying about CCTV images. I did say that the LED lighting and improved lighting system will enhance the imaging and make the people feel safe. So I cannot say any further than that because the blueprint is going to be launched next year for Dewsbury.
Thank you. Right, move on to question 12. Councillor Loki again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for Councillor Scott, referring back to one of my written questions last month. From the answer received last month, we're agreed that changing to all-out local elections would probably release over £100,000 each year. Considering the expense, I do not believe there is a strong case to continue with electing by thirds as we do at the moment. Will Cabinet support the change to all-out elections so that we can redirect these funds into vital services?
Councillor Scott.
I'd like to thank Councillor Lukic for the question. So, in answer to what you've just said, we are not agreed. And it would, what we did say, it would probably be a suggested saving of 900,000 over a period of 8 years. But this took into account the European parliamentary elections. So, with the European parliamentary elections changing now, it would obviously reduce the cost further. So, the options for moving to 4 yearly elections was considered by the Democracy Commission and it reported to full council. Having weighed up the factors alongside the evidence, we have not received or found it possible to reach a consensus. So it wouldn't be Cabinet's decision. It would have to come back to full council. I suggest you look at the Democracy Commission, the recommendations there, what was presented, but there was no consensus and it was a cross-party working group.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Can I just ask about the point you made about European parliamentary elections? Because I understand that those elections receive national funding. So on the occasions when those elections fell on the same date as local government elections, the cost for the council of holding these elections would be reduced. So my understanding would be that if European parliamentary elections are no longer going to be held, the saving would actually increase because there would be more local elections that are not shared with national elections.
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, I thank you for that question. I don't have the costings to hand. I will come back to you on it, but the European parliamentary elections will continue to take place with the possibility of not this country being part of it.
Thank you. We're on to question 13, Councillor McGuinn.
Question for Councillor Patterson. You've already made some sort of announcement, so I might have not. Has the council identified where every child currently at Almonbury Community School will be placed when secondary provision ends at the school in 2020?
Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Councillor McGuinn. You do give me the opportunity to say again that we will be making an announcement tomorrow to all the parents and stakeholders of the school. But I should point out that your question, as stated, is making a presumption that parents will not have a say in which school their children will attend in future. I mean, that is not and has never been the case. I mean, officers have been working really hard to get us to the position where we are now so that they can talk to parents tomorrow. There's going to be a full open evening next week where they can discuss those options that those parents have or those pupils have with their parents and their carers. So we absolutely understand that parents and their pupils must be at the heart of that. And as I say, we're happy that we'll be able to move on that journey tomorrow.
Supplementary.
Yeah. Just like to say that you talked about people not being at ward briefings. Of course, I understand that you couldn't make the ward briefings as well with the officers and I understand the reasons why. Can you tell me how many parents have asked for a transfer for their children out of ASC, Almonbury Community School, since notice of cessation of secondary provision?
Councillor Patterson.
And I've asked this question several times, by the way.
No, I can't. And all parents have been advised not to do that. They've all been advised to wait until we have all the arrangements in place so that they can make a proper, considered choice. At the moment, any parent, if they chose to contact another school, then they would be told that this is an in-year application and they're not able to do that at the moment because for whatever reason. So, no, I can't give you those figures, but certainly I will be able to tell you, hopefully in the next week or so, what choices parents and their children are making.
Thank you. Question 14, Councillor McGuinn again.
Right. What cost-benefit analysis has been done to justify ending secondary provision at Almonbury Community School? It's a question I've asked several times as well.
Councillor Patterson.
Yes, you have, Mr. Councillor McGuinn, and you've received the answer several times as well. Full financial arrangements were in all of the documents that came to Cabinet when making the decision about closing the school. I mean, it's a complex situation, and it's not just a financial one. And in some ways, finance is the least of the problems. The problem was that the children who we have at our greatest concern for were not getting the best education that they could. And the best way to provide them with that good all-round education was actually to close the school. So it's been well documented, and the final decision was made by the Cabinet in July. And now we want to look forward. We want to look forward to giving those children the best education that they can have.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Can you tell me what extra building costs are envisaged at the three schools named as recipients of the Almonbury Community School students? Are they going to be in it?
Councillor Patterson.
Again, I can't tell you because we don't know where those children want to go. I mean, we have made arrangements with all the local schools that if needs be, there will be capital available to make extra places available. But until we have that conversation with all those parents, we will not know how many children want to stay at King James's or to Netherhall or to Newsham or indeed any other school. So it's only then. And those decisions will be made public. It'll all be through in Cabinet reports, and you'll be able to see the costings then.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. We're on to question 15. Councillor Idale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is to Councillor Cathy Scott. Are there any plans to update the councillor's automated switchboard service?
Councillor Turner.
I'm not Cathy Scott in disguise.
It's been upgraded.
Oh, well, I might be. All in the Friday night. Councillor Idale, thanks very much for the question. The current telephony system contract expires in 20/21. We are currently considering our options for future service delivery. The way technology is improving, there is an opportunity for this procurement to embrace improved natural language processing to reduce the error rate that requires intervention. In the meantime, we update the system on a regular basis to improve the service as software improves, how we get feedback from service users. So we constantly are upgrading, but we have the opportunity to say in 2020/21 to look at a whole new system. That will go through the normal procurement system.
Thank you. Councillor Idale, supplementary.
Thank you for that. Will this new system cause as much blood pressure as the last one?
one can only hazard a guess because we're out for procurement at the moment, so we'll see what it does. We do hit an 85% success rate. So, as I say, as technology improves, we get into a different system. We'll see. And I'm sorry if you get blood pressure problems, but sure, our friend in public health will give you some advice on that.
Thank you. We're on to question 16, Councillor P.A. Davis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question for Councillor Walker. Do you agree that the recent decision to remove green bins was excessively punitive?
Councillor Walker.
Thanks for this question. Yeah, I previously stated, mainly I think in written answers to people who ask these questions because we've not got on to answering the questions publicly. Yeah, looking at this, I think that the enforcement of the existing recycling policy was a really important step to take. The reason for that was the continuing decline in the rate of recycling. We needed to do something about that. The process that was put in place, I think the idea of having some sanction on people who consistently refused to recycle was something that we needed to do. The reason for that was that a lot of loads were being contaminated by waste going into the green bins that shouldn't have been there. And the result of that was that there were quite a number of whole truckloads of waste that we could not recycle. So the process was brought in sort of around March time at the beginning of this year. At the point where I joined the Cabinet, I think, along with officers and fellow councillors, fellow Cabinet members, the decision was made to halt the process of confiscating further bins, to look at how things were going and to reflect on that process. There were sort of pros and cons, really, from what had happened. The pros were that it had had a very significant impact on the rate of recycling. So looking at this, each week 35 additional tonnes of rubbish were being recycled rather than going to incineration. And some of it was actually going to landfill because we were reaching the limit of the amount of waste that we could incinerate. And to put that into context, that's about 5 or 6 full wagons full of waste each week. And since that period, things haven't slipped back. We've continued to build on that, so it's had a long-term benefit. However, there were things that when we reflected on the process, we realised we could have done better and that we will do better going forward. So things like the initial communication with people, the initial education work, if you like, with people about what can go into the bin. We probably should have done more around that before we began the sanction of stickering and removing the bins. We probably needed to do a little bit more work with the bin crews around how that process would work. We did bring in extra advisors to work alongside a very dedicated team. One of the most interesting afternoons I've spent since joining the Cabinet was going out with one of the advisors, inspecting bins in one of the Dewsbury wards. It was really interesting, and I picked up from that how dedicated they are to their job. They take great pride in working with others within the council to improve recycling. We did take on some agency staff. As always with agency staff, you don't perhaps get the same level of professionalism and knowledge that you get with full-time staff. So another decision that's been made is that we have taken on more full-time advisors, and I think their role going forward is really important. So, yeah, some mistakes were made, but there were gains from it, and I think we've been honest about the pros and cons. We've learned from it, and I think in any organisation, the ability to learn from things and move forward is very important.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Thank you for your response. It's good to hear that we can accept that lessons have been learned from this process. have all the bins actually been restored that were removed, or how soon will that process happen?
Right, as far as I'm aware, all the people who had their bins removed have now received a letter. But what we're trying to do is to work with them and ensure that they are happy about the green bin being returned, and they're happy that they now understand what needs to go in that bin. Because we do realise if we just returned them all, we would have just amplified really the mistakes that were perhaps made earlier in terms of not doing enough work with people, the education side of things, before they get the bins back. I also realised as well, going out with the bin advisors, the bins were actually being confiscated for a range of reasons. The day I went out, even though we'd actually stopped confiscating in theory, we did, just in a fairly small section of a housing estate, we did need to ask for certain bins to be confiscated, and that was because there were houses that were unoccupied, people were using them as just general bins as they were walking down the streets. There were some properties which had been refurbished, and unfortunately builders had used those to put rubbish in. And so those bins had to be taken back. Some of them had to be repaired because they were probably thrown away because they were smashed. But generally, we are working now with householders to ensure that wherever possible, we can return bins.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. We're on to question 17. Councillor A. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question to the Deputy Leader. Could you please provide an update on what is happening with the George Hotel?
Councillor McBride.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The planning application was approved in late September to convert the building to be in part hotel with various ground floor uses, including bars and a small facility for a museum. Since the grant of permission, senior officers of the council have held meetings with the owner to map out the next steps to delivering the proposals at the earliest opportunity. These discussions include how the project might be funded and how the council might assist to accelerate the process. The council is working with the owner and has also been able to show developers around the building to stimulate further interest in the project. This is an ongoing saga. We'll keep you up to date.
Supplementary.
Thank you for the response, and that's all very positive. I just wondered, given the hopefully good relations with the current owners, whether consideration might be taken to work with them to make sure that the outer facade is kept tidy and presentable in the near term. Thinking about things like flags on the flagpoles, some areas are looking a bit tatty.
Working with them for some time, over a couple of years. I'll take your point and I will pass it on to the relevant officers if you've got a particular concern over that matter. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Councillor McBride. We're on to question 18. A. Smith again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was a question to the Cabinet Member for Housing and Democracy. Could the Council confirm how many K&H multi-storey residential buildings do not have accessible entrances for disabled people?
Councillor Scott.
Yes, thanks for the question, Councillor Smith. There's one building, it's Buxton House. It doesn't have a current level access, so that's the only one that we've got. There's 4 high-rises, and the only one that doesn't have a level access is that. They do have lifts on all them facilities.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Supplementary.
Thank you for the response. This question actually came about from a direct experience at Malham Court, where a disabled relative of a resident who was ill was trying to visit and trying to get access into the front door and was prohibited, she was walking with a frame, by the steps, and I actually had to help her into the building. I accept that there's lifts in the building, but I'm just wondering about other accessibility issues in residential high-rises.
Councillor Scott.
Thanks for that, Councillor Smith. I wasn't aware of that. I will get onto that first thing tomorrow, go and have a look at it. I wasn't aware of that. But all the retirement living schemes that we have, they're all accessible by wheelchair. I wasn't aware of that instance, so let me go out and check it. And I'm happy to meet on site if necessary.
Thank you. Question 19, Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Mayor. Question for Councillor Kendrick. How many looked after children are currently being taken through the EU settlement programme?
Councillor Kendrick.
Mr Mayor, we currently have 5 children involved in the EU settlement programme, and the legal status of those children is care orders to Kirklees Council made under the 1989 Children's Act. And we also have one other child of EU origin who's on an interim care order.
Supplementary.
It's right and proper that we should help out the most vulnerable people in the borough in the wake of what's happening with the EU situation. Can you outline some of the impacts of potential instabilities in these children's futures and the steps that we have to make to ameliorate those?
Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Some of the children that we have are very, very small children, and really they're dealing with being in care as any other child would. There are some adolescents that we have, and of course there's an increased likelihood of them being subject to anxiety and mental stress about, are they in a permanent home now or not? And we would take steps to deal with any of those issues with them. This council stands as their parent for these children, and it's our clear responsibility to ensure that we've all the correct status and paperwork done for them to remain here, and really to avoid a future Windrush type situation with these children.
Thank you. Question 18, Councillor Marchington.
Thank you. Question to Councillor Khan. In the light of the Chief Medical Officer's warning recently that lives may be lost due to a shortage of medicines if the UK crashes out of the European Union without an agreement, is the Council confident that the lives, the safety of patients can be assured across Kirklees?
Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Ensuring the sufficiency of medical supplies is a NHS responsibility. However, the Council is working closely with partners. The A&E Delivery Board, on which the Council are part of, are looking at medicine supply and demand as part of their Brexit preparations. Our business continuity plans for vulnerable patients in care homes includes how to ensure medicine access is optimised. And also the Kirklees Health Protection Board has a responsibility to ensure plans are in place to protect the health of the population and works in collaboration to flag issues with vaccination supplies, seeking assurances that alternatives are available. This is ongoing. Further assurances were received at West Yorkshire Local Health Resilience Partnership last week.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Supplementary, Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Councillor Khan, for those reassurances. What prompted the question is previously when there was the threat of a flu epidemic. I understand that under our public health duty we had a key role in making sure that vaccinations and retrovirals are available. Could I just ask if it's not in place already, can we look at what under our public health duties, under emergency planning, the ongoing situation, is any ongoing situations that we will be best placed to coordinate a response to that to make sure the lives of everybody across Kirklees is kept as safe as possible?
Councillor Khan.
The Council is doing what it can within its remit in terms of vaccination supplies and seeking the right reassurances from the correct bodies.
Thank you. Question 21, Councillor Burke.
Mayor.
I'd like to ask the Cabinet Member, does the Council have a programme for maintaining and refurbishing its libraries? And if so, how much does it allocate for its libraries maintenance programme each year?
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Yes, of course, we maintain and invest in our libraries. As is well known, I am very fully committed to providing the best service we can for our library service and for those services delivered from the best facilities we can afford. Recent spend, so in 2017-18, we had 87k capital investment and 183k servicing, maintenance and repairs. 2018-19, there's 100k capital investment and 101k servicing, maintenance and repairs. We've also spent over 990k in the last year on equipment, including furniture, across our library estate. Of course, it's not a bottomless pit. There are other demands on the capital investment from the Council, but we do continue to invest in our libraries and, as I said, make sure they're the best service we can. If you know, in the capital plan, we have £4 million set aside in the capital plan for investment in new structures and new buildings in the next 3 years.
Councillor Burke, supplementary.
Thank you. Thank you for the response. And I'm pleased to know that you're passionate about the libraries as well. I know you are. You've attended many of our meetings in Linley, and you've shown your dedication to keeping our libraries open and maintaining them. Perhaps then you would consider refurbishment with regards to Linley Library. It's been 15 years since the interior was painted, so perhaps that could be looked at as an option going forward to further enhancing the library, a library that is very well used in Linley, not just by the borrowing of books, but footfall, and we'd like to keep it clean and pleasant for all of our users.
Councillor Turner.
Supplementary, Councillor Burke. I meet with the Chief Librarian and senior officers every fortnight to discuss the libraries and the capital investment programme. At our next meeting, I will have a discussion with officers about whether we can invest in the Linley Library.
Question 22, Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ward councillors receive information and advice from officers to enable them to carry out their duties, including their casework. Do you believe that the current councillor casework arrangements, including councillor inquiries, email, and the existing systems for sharing information for casework is working effectively?
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, I'm going to take my time because it's Democracy Week this week, so the 14th to the 20th of October. So I'm going to give a big shout out to all my cross-party colleagues that work in the Democracy Group. So yeah, the Democracy Commission and Cross-Party Working Group have been working hard to look at the councillor support, and we have had feedback from the engagement events that the system's not fully meeting our needs, particularly the councillors, both in the system and its processes. But I want to remind you, going back, this was a cross-party councillor group that shaped the package, and it was not because it's not a satisfactory outcome, it's been paused at the moment. So we've taken on board what's been said, it's been paused. I've asked officers to work with us to develop a new approach that's person-centred, and it's also about, in terms of the council's casework, that it's tailored for their needs. So it will be a cross-party working group. I presume my other colleagues will be involved, and I hope that you can help shape it. But we have listened, and we're holding our hands up. It's not been right. Some have found it okay and very effective, some haven't. But we have to go back and revisit it.
Councillor Burke, supplementary.
Thank you. I appreciate the work and effort that you are doing with regards to clear communication with officers. It is incredibly frustrating, especially the council inquiries email, when receiving a response, it takes sometimes weeks to get a reference number, and then often, in my case, and I know with colleagues as well, that it can take months to get any kind of response, and if the response is incoherent or it doesn't make sense, you then have to go through the process again. This is not good for communication with officers, for residents, and being able to us to be able to carry out and equip us with the information that we need to help our residents and some of the most vulnerable residents in our areas. So that is incredibly frustrating and has been for some time. One thing I would like to offer as a suggestion is what we used to have previously is having ward meetings with key officers, key partners, and we used to have ward meetings, and I think they worked effectively, especially for the more complex issues where we needed to have a clear line of inquiry with an officer, and then it was open and transparent, and then people were held to account. That may not be practically possible for everything, but I think for those more complex issues,
Councillor Burke, can we get to the question, please? I know it's the last
I'm
question.
trying to help with the Democracy Commission's work, and I will provide.
Because we've done quite well with the questions, so can we come to the question? Thanks.
I think that is something that could be perhaps looked at for the future, because it did work. I do appreciate council inquiries for short things which don't have a high need, but I think going forward, if we could have ward meetings with key officers and partners, that would be really, really helpful and help our residents.
Councillor Scott.
I'm inviting you, Councillor Burke, to possibly come and join us and perhaps sit in a session when
I'm
we're
happy as a Lib
debating
Dem,
it.
thank you.
You're more than welcome to come. I just need to also raise the awareness. The engagement with the group leaders is crucial here, so that is going to begin imminently, and we're actually going to begin work on this immediately with councillors and officers with this case system to look at how we can better it for ourselves. Okay.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of question time. So we're back on to the item 13. Page 113, the minutes of the meeting of the Cabinet are here for information to know. Item 14, holding the executive to account for Part A of this item. Council will receive a portfolio update from the Deputy Leader of the Council. Oral questions to Cabinet members on their portfolio and on relevant Cabinet minutes will be at Part B. Can I now invite Councillor McBride to present his portfolio update? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've strategic responsibilities for planning, transportation, housing and regeneration. I share the brief for regeneration with Councillor Mather, and the implementational aspects of planning, transport and housing are fulfilled by other Cabinet colleagues. The region is the key as the major source of investment with regard to all of these functions, and the local plan is the basis of the Council's strategy. The approval of the plan in February was the culmination of a decade of seeking approval by the region, the Council and the Government of a framework for developing Kirklees for the next 15 years. It sealed our intention of providing the land for housing, industry and commerce and a basis for infrastructural support. It stated our policies and objectives, determining planning criteria and priorities. The most prominent feature of the plan was to build 31,000 houses, providing the necessary variety of tenures and affordability across the borough. At the same time, it provided additional green space in the urban area, and although expanding into the green belt, it ensured that 69% remained green belt, unthreatened by uncontrolled development. It provided sufficient land to meet industrial needs. It spelled out the transport framework to support the plan. It took account of employment needs in the borough and enabled sustainable movement for employment and other activities within the region. As supplements to the plan, we're currently devising area action plans for our two major towns, plus additional supplementary guidance, for example, on residential design. The SIL mechanism to determine charges regarding all major applications with reference to infrastructure contribution is currently with the Inspector. Most recently, we have strengthened our enforcement team and revised strategies for compliance. Now the focus is on delivery, and without swamping the Council with information, I'll give an update in the areas of transport, housing and town centre regeneration. With regard to transport, there are a range of schemes in the pipeline providing strategic connections to and within our major towns and townships. They include key gateways from the south of Huddersfield to the town centre, unlocking congestion points at Lockwood Bar and Longroyd Bridge, the A62 Halifax Road and Leeds Road gateway from the north. In North Kirklees, major improvements are agreed for the A644 Murfield to Dewsbury, Chidswell to the M62, and longer term, the North Kirklees orbital route will open access to the M1 and M62 for the whole of North Kirklees. The Cooper Bridge scheme, now modified to disperse traffic at Kirklees, Kirklees' most congested pinch point, will also serve as proposals for housing at Bradley, ease pressure on the A644 and minimise congestion at the confluence of the A644 and the A62, which is Cooper Bridge itself. Additionally, a major feature of all these schemes is enhancement of cycling and walking provision, as well as greenery greenery additions to absorb and counteract the impact of dense traffic. For example, the Leeds Road scheme will add 1 hectare of green space as part of the total scheme. All of these projects are in and approved at different stages of development as part of the West Yorkshire Transport Fund and will be delivered in the next 5 years. Within the major towns, improvements are proposed for pedestrians at Northgate Dewsbury and on the route, the station to Pioneer House to the market. In Huddersfield, we've already announced major schemes for New Street and Crosschurch Street, i.e. our main thoroughfares. Meanwhile, we have bids in for improvements to Home Firth and to improve pedestrian movements between Huddersfield bus and train stations, a refurbishment of Dewsbury bus station and a £10 million multimodal linked improvement from Bradford to Dewsbury, mainly impacting on Cleckheaton and Heckmanwike. These are Kirklees proposals as part of the West Yorkshire bid on the Transforming Cities Fund. And the object of that is to minimise private and maximise public transport. On the housing front, annual delivery is now at 1550 units per annum and growing. With regard to our large sites, Ravensthorpe, Chidswell, Suthill and Bradley, we have planning approvals and at Suthill, Ravensthorpe, part of Bradley and 1 underway for Chidswell. 6 extra homes are planned throughout the borough, including on all the large sites. On our large sites, particularly where we own the land, we're working with developers to ensure local people, led by councillors, shape the features of what will be future villages. This will ensure we have a balance between affordable and other housing and between different tenures. We'll also be able to respond to community demands for schools, community centres and sports facilities and so on. We're clearly in the early stages of delivering this programme, but we're also planning modular build with a much higher energy efficiency standard and are also aiming at construction in and with associated training in Kirklees. There's much more to be determined, so this is but a taste of the overall programme. More detail will be forthcoming from Housing Cabinet colleagues at a subsequent meeting. I will conclude on the blueprint for Huddersfield, launched last June, and the master plan for Dewsbury, which will be rolled out in February. In both towns, we've based strategic revival around key themes, that is to say footfall, attractions to the town and connectivity. In Dewsbury, the anchor points will be a new learning centre and refurbished Pioneer House. This is a massive investment in the future of Dewsbury youth, which will create its own additional footfall to promote trade. Trade attractions is the main reason for additional refurbishment of the market. To these anchor points, we've improved the entrance to the station. We've also developed schemes to enhance and improve pedestrian access to the railway station and to the market via Pioneer House. We're also using heritage funds to improve other key buildings, such as the Black Bull. We're also working with business and the private sector to bring Field House and the major arcades back into use. This is all supported with public realm improvements to street furniture, creation of green spaces, which will give the place an ambience which will attract additional visitors and further investment. The Transpennine upgrade will make the town even more attractive, providing regular access to Leeds in less than 10 minutes. The blueprint for Huddersfield was launched last June, a £250 million investment planned over 10 years to refocus and refurbish the town against a backcloth of towns nationally declining as a result of competition from both internet and out-of-town shopping. In Huddersfield, we're targeting our main investment in the centre of the town. It's intended to create a central cultural attraction based around a refurbished library, art gallery, museum, a new music centre, all within the piazza. It opens up that area and provides a link between the town's other great assets, university and train station. It'll create a cultural focus to attract visitors and at the same time uplift the main thoroughfares within the town. The initial evidence of this is the council's investment in New Street and Crosschurch Street, currently out for public consultation. The main features of these investments will be to provide a greener, more attractive footway and carriageway, which will be adapted to street pop-up markets, fairs and other activities. We're also investing in more living in the town, which will add vibrancy and further footfall. The council has worked with the developers to bring the court building back into use for housing. It's also supplied loan facilities for an upgrade of Kingsgate, which will also include a new cinema. In the immediate future, the public will see a major upgrade of the piazza, breaking through what feels like a barrier between the town and university, linking the Lawrence Batley Theatre, enabling us to provide a green backcloth to the main features of gallery, museum and music centre. Just bear with me a second.
You've got 1 minute.
I've only got 10 minutes. Although the shopping offering in the town will diminish, the refocus of the town as a leisure attraction will change the character of shopping to a more bespoke, boutique and a specialist offering not available online. The other end of the town will see a refurbished open and closed market and a rail station transformed in part by Transpennine upgrade and in part by the council and West Yorkshire investment, which will provide access to the back and also provide an alternative entrance. In Huddersfield, as in Dewsbury, the fundamental transport upgrades make both towns very attractive for housing and other developments, as our towns provide easy access to the metropolises of Leeds and Manchester. The council is thus putting its main investment into its major towns, which have such exciting futures. This is phase one in the move from austerity, and the scope will widen next year to say more about investment in other towns and townships to provide the same impetus on a proportional scale. These plans at this stage are not advanced, but we will discuss and work with councillors in other localities to plan improvements which will make all our areas more sustainable and attractive.
10 minutes over, but you can carry on.
I'm finished. Done.
Thank you. Part A is now complete, so we move on to Part B. Are there any questions, comments to the Cabinet Member Regeneration Portfolio, Councillor McBride, Councillor Bolt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor McBride, for that overview. Can I take you back to 7:25 today, when you said that all reports for West Yorkshire Combined Authority had climate assessment at each stage of approval? Also, we heard that the minutes of the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, agreed on the 27th of June, had a decision on a climate emergency, which said the future Combined Authority report will comment on the impact any decision will have on a climate emergency agenda. On the 3rd of September, you attended and spoke, I wasn't given that privilege, at the Investment Committee, where a decision was made on a major Kirklees scheme, which you said would unlock, just said at 8:10, would unlock congestion at Cooper Bridge. Neither at that report or at any time in the public consultation has there been any data on traffic movement through Cooper Bridge. So to say that it will unlock is a rather definitive statement, unsupported by evidence. Similar, in the report to the Investment Committee, where the rest of the items were taking in the region of 6 minutes to pass through, this was nodded through in 2 minutes and 10 seconds. There is not the reference to a climate emergency or any impact in this report. Yet you approved further funding of £215,000 on project development costs. You approved that and moved it when the report also says, with respect to the Kirklees transport model, which is a strategic model developed to understand the implication of traffic forecasts for the local plan, the calibration and validation of the local area of the transport model was poor and achieving absolute web tag criteria proving difficult. So the transport model was referred to as poor and couldn't achieve the criteria. The consultants that you'd also retained to help you draft the initial consultation had been unable to fulfil their obligation, and you are now going out for further consultation. That's again in the West Yorkshire report. So to say that, as you did at 7:25, that reports have a climate assessment is incorrect. It's as incorrect as saying that this decision had been to Cabinet for approval. Mr Mayor, who approves decisions in this council? When we're seeking further funding for West Yorkshire, you also refer to the scheme as now modified. There hasn't been a report back to the Cabinet. As you admitted to me, it hadn't been taken to Cabinet. So which secret cabal are approving decisions that impact on the whole of Kirklees? Why are these going to West Yorkshire when it has not been to an open, transparent, democratic body? As far as I know, Mr Mayor, the Cabinet members do not have delegated responsibility to make decisions. It's a collective, so it should come to a meeting and it should be validated. We also see, Mr Mayor, the risks to schemes in West Yorkshire, and in particular to the Cooper Bridge scheme as identified. One of the key risks is a failure to agree the necessary buy-in or approvals from Kirklees, Calderdale and combined authority senior officers. Why are reports going for a decision where there is a risk that senior officers may not support them, Mr Mayor? Surely these should be sorted before they go. Councillor McBride has said publicly that this scheme is being downgraded. It's going to be a much smaller scheme. You didn't say that. I'm glad we're being webcast, and I hope that the Huddersfield Examiner will be able to report what Councillor McBride said in their paper when he said this will be a much smaller scheme. If the Huddersfield Examiner got it wrong, I'm sure they will correct it. Similar, Mr Mayor, the inaccuracies. No. 1 minute. You get the right of reply. Mr Mayor, similar inaccuracies in this report and prejudicial statements when going for Kirklees approvals. Cooper Bridge is one of the most important gateways into Huddersfield. I hope that when Councillor McBride responds, he'll tell us which part of Huddersfield actually abuts onto the Cooper Bridge roundabout. Because last time I looked at the geographical maps, Huddersfield was not connected to Cooper Bridge. Calderdale is on two sides and Murfield is. Liversedge and Gummersall also abuts on part of the estate. I would say, Mr Mayor, that a proper description of Cooper Bridge is that it's one of the most important gateways into the region. It's one of the most important gateways in Kirklees. But just for the Cabinet and Councillor McBride to be Huddersfield-centric demeans the whole process. So, Mr Mayor, to come back so that Councillor McBride can remember, where is the climate assessment that you promised us would accompany these reports? Where is the democratic accountability that enables these things to go for changes of significant magnitude? And when will the public again be consulted? Because, as you said, when withdrawing a scheme in Holmfirth, we don't want to put schemes forward that have no public support. It's disgusting, Mr Mayor.
Councillor McBride, do you want to reply to that, please? Thank you.
As I said in my earlier comments, I'm very unhappy with the amount of information that gets to. Sorry. Go ahead, As I said in an earlier statement, very unhappy with the amount of information that is given in the public, is put in the public domain. I get reports regularly about what is going on. Officers are subjecting all schemes constantly to analysis. I agree with you entirely. The amount of information supplied is inadequate, and I've made the comment myself so often at West Yorkshire. But with regard to the process of what each scheme is required to do, it's required to fulfil criteria laid down by the transport model. It is required to meet environmental impact assessments, and it's also required to ensure that delivery will be as stated. If we wanted evidence of that, only, I think it was Tuesday, officers drew to my attention the fact that all our schemes are now subject to a reappraisal in time terms, in model terms, and in terms of energy efficiency. And every scheme in West Yorkshire is now being subject to a further appraisal because West Yorkshire is conscious of its own climate change resolution, which it's trying to apply. But overall, if you're making the comment about the inadequacy of information, I agree with you. With regard to Cooper Bridge, I never said it was a smaller scheme. I said the roundabout would be, the gyratory would be smaller. I said the scheme was of a different type. It attempts now to disperse the traffic over a wider area, which I also have just explained. So it's a different scheme, trying to achieve the same objectives more effectively.
Thank you, Councillor McBride. Councillor Cooper?
It was pleasing to hear about the words from Councillor McBride about higher energy efficiency standards. That was good to hear. One of the issues that's come up with in front of us at the Climate Emergency Working Party is something called a performance gap. That's a gap between the performance you expect from a house that is built in terms of its energy efficiency and that which is actually realised, one that's actually delivered. What it generally means is that houses use twice as much energy as they are told to during as we expect them to. So what we build isn't necessarily what we get, and part of that's to do with building control, and it's the deregulated building control system. Some of that is due to that. So really one of the ways of actually tackling that is to have a quality assured system, is to have a system where you have a strong degree of quality assurance. And one of the things that came up at the Climate Emergency Working Party was the Passive House system. You may remember that 2.5–3 years ago we produced a report, an all-party Passive House report on that scheme. And it's not something that I've just dreamt up or has been dreamt up as a personal hobby horse of mine, well, not too much. But it's something where we have councils like Exeter, Exeter City Council, Norwich City Council, Wolverhampton Council, who are actually using the Passive House approach in public buildings. And if we had that applied to the 31,000 homes that we are talking about building in Kirklees, and they say saved, I don't know, £500 on the fuel bills, that'd be £16 million that wouldn't be going on fuel bills, which would be going back into the local economy. And that makes building houses a regeneration project and something that we should be justly proud of, and as a way of dealing with fuel poverty. And it would also mean that what we say on paper is what actually is delivered in real life. And it isn't just words. It isn't just lip service. So I say again, as I've said a number of times in this chamber, can we adopt to some within our own housing, within our own projects, at least the Passive House standard? Can we adopt that, as other councils have done, but yet we have been resistant to doing?
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor McBride.
Councillor Cooper, you and I have had this conversation many times about passive housing. And I've said to you many times, would you prefer to have 100 semi-passive or much more efficient houses as opposed to 10 passive? Bear in mind that the cost of these houses is significantly higher. Well, according to our officers who did analysis, the same report you're referring to gave us the information it was at least 25% more costly and possibly up to 50%. There are also additional problems that really the people having the houses need to manage them. And if they don't manage them effectively, the use of the passiveness, as it were, is wasted. And we've had experiences of that before, and with initiatives that you've started in Ravensthorpe, when the residents weren't, as it were, obeying the rules. Net effect was negligible. No, they weren't.
Councillor Cooper, can you let Councillor McBride talk, please? Thank you.
So we've talked to a number of companies that provide modular build and have a very high standard with regard to energy efficiency. And we've also said there's no point in us just buying those houses and bringing them massive distances to build them. We want them built here, ideally, and we want our people to build them. So that we want to make a condition also. So we are exploring with a range of different companies what might be possible. We wouldn't exclude the idea of passive housing if you could prove that there is a provider that can provide at a standard cost. There is a further factor. We can talk about our own land, but most of the provision of 31,000 houses is not going to be on our land. Also, planning criteria will dictate what we can and can't do. So we don't have, a blank check or infinite powers to determine what we can and can't do. We have much more power when we own our own land. So we can have much more control and we'll exercise it, hopefully, effectively.
Thank you. Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Peter. I'm just going to follow up. I've got a couple of questions about the Huddersfield Blueprint. I just want to follow up this stuff about Passive House, since Councillor Cooper has brought it up, because I was involved in that working group as well and did some of the visits, and I'm passionate about passive housing as well. I mean, it was great sadness that, and actually celebration as well, that the Sterling Prize for the Royal Institute of British Architects was actually, for the first time ever, given to a social housing project. And a massive congratulations to Michael Richards, and particularly to Cathy Hawley, who were the architects involved with that. And it just shows you what local authorities can do. 100 houses built to passive house, saving those residents not just hundreds of pounds a year, but tens of thousands of pounds over the lifetime. We did gather evidence and understand what our officers said, but I mean, you're talking about a 10 to 15, if you're working in scale, you've got a 10 to 15% additional build cost for passive house if you're building at volume, i.e. 100 houses. Kirklees has got land to do that. It saves carbon reduction, it's energy efficient, it saves resources, and it actually saves money for our residents as well. We could have done that. It's a pity that we didn't do more with that. The issue I had with Councillor Cooper about this is it's all right being passionate about passive house, but if we actually even adopted passive house principles, facing houses, we don't even do that in planning now, making sure that houses are predominantly facing south, so you maximise solar gain, increasing levels of insulation, things like, one of the things at Kelham Island, when Andrew and I went down there, is actually they had the photovoltaic array, all the houses were connected. The guy who ran that, and this is right, it's a commercial development, not social. They'd set up a little energy delivery company, so in the middle of the day, when the photovoltaics were producing more energy than the individual houses use, they actually distributed it to the properties, so reducing distribution costs, some of which, as I know, is in the City Region Energy Plan, all of that. So there are things that we could have done with the will. I think the issue I always have, and I think with some of Andrew's projects, is about the devil's in the detail. And some of the evidence you asked for, Peter, was found, the costings have been looked at, but the will needs to be there to do it. And on some of the bigger pieces of land we've got, Kirklees Council could do that if they wanted to do so, and I would be about that. And again, just look at the stuff at Norwich, it's fantastic. The design is, what the big, it's terraced housing. You go to the Home Valley, and you see these great big, 5-bedroom houses, detached houses and everything, massive amounts of steps, not accessible and everything. It's not good land use, but in Norwich, they've got really good design, and it's also very efficient as well. And there's stuff we could do. It'd be really good in Dewsbury, looking at Cathy there. Parts of Dewsbury, those houses would fit in. All the valleys and everything would be really good. Right, a couple of questions I've got about the Huddersfield Blueprint. And again, thank you, Peter, for that. I think it's an important project. The aspiration you talked about in the Huddersfield Blueprint about linking together the university quarter with the town centre, my perception from the stuff I've heard is it's going to take significant civil engineering to reroute parts of the ring road. And I just wonder at this stage what thoughts have been given to the transport links around Huddersfield to facilitate the linking those two things together. So I'd like thoughts about that, because again, we need to be thinking long term. The other thing I'd like us to potential question to answer that, if we can do, but if not, to be thought about in the future is, yes, it's right to focus on our town centres, but also we know that a major issue in and around Huddersfield and out is about manufacturing. Kirklees, we know, is the third largest manufacturing district in the whole of the country. And given the proximity of the Leeds Road Economic Development Zone to Huddersfield Town Centre, they are walking through them, they're very close. I just wonder what thoughts have been given over the long term about integrating the manufacturing side of our town, which is part of our wonder. It's not just textiles, it's light engineering and all that, to the town centre. So a couple of those questions. I don't think you don't need to respond to the passive house stuff, Pete. I don't want to open that again, but just expressing my passionate view about that. But being answers again about the ring road, civil engineering on the ring road, about linking the town centre through to the Leeds Road Economic Development Zone. Thank you.
Councillor McBride.
Yeah. You talk about linking the industrial commercial part to the centre of the town. There's a plan already in the public domain. It's called the Huddersfield Road Corridor. It's a 2-mile programme which has been well documented. It's been in the Examiner. It's part of the blueprint, which was available at the piazza, the shop on the piazza, which explained this. So that is happening. With regard to Kellermound, I've been to Kellermound. I think the houses produced there were produced by situ, who do not produce passive housing. They produce semi-passive housing, and they're very conscious of that statement. They will not claim that their houses are passive. I think it was situ that produced them. What they say is they will not go that, as it were, extra mile to get that certificate, albeit they believe their houses are virtually the same as certificated passive housing.
Thank you, Councillor McBride.
By the way, we have not decided to build any of these houses this way. We are talking to a range of different companies who we might engage, but in that engagement we are saying we would like them to build here, and we would like them to be locally built and train local people in the process. Because if you had to transport them, from Leeds or from North Yorkshire, well, it's counterproductive in carbon terms, isn't it?
Thank you. Councillor Lukic.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just wanted to thank Councillors Mather and Scott for their earlier answers. I think I neglected to thank them at the time. Wanted to thank Councillor McBride for his answer last month and confirmation that any investment in Dewsbury from the new Towns Fund that has been announced will be on top of existing council commitments. I just wanted to ask if there's any sort of a quick update on any further work done on our bid for that since last month, or if the necessary prospectus and guidance has been released or not from government.
The update on Dewsbury I've just given you. There'll be a further update in February when we roll out the master plan for Dewsbury. There'll be some more detail, but there's a hell of a lot more detail in terms of the bids we have into various government regimes and to other funding regimes, combined authority regimes, which may give us additional money to invest further.
Thank you, Councillor McBride. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor McBride. Number of questions, really. You talked in your update, which I thank you for, about transport and the strategy for transport. You spoke about minimising private and maximising public transport, which I thought was very interesting. I would be interested in your views on how that's working in the part of Kirklees that I represent, where we have a continuing deterioration in public transport and no investment whatsoever, either in public transport or in roads infrastructure. What I think the local plan, you said the local plan had attached to it a transport framework. That transport framework seems to have missed out part of Kirklees.
because there's nothing in that plan for south of Waterloo. So the whole of the south of Huddersfield out through the A629, there's nothing planned at all. So I'd be interested to know how we've got a transport strategy that excludes part of the borough. You also talked about footfall and connectivity within the town centre as part of that blue plan. And again, I come back to if we don't have any investment in the roads, if we don't have any investment in public transport, how are you proposing that the people from the rural south of Huddersfield are actually going to get into their town centre? Because as far as I can see, there's nothing in any plans anywhere to address any of that. Thank you.
To the private sector providers of public transport. Bear in mind, we have a privatised system of buses, a deregulated system which was imposed by your government many years ago and has been consistent since. They are now considering the possibility of giving those powers back to the, well, it would be to the combined authority rather than to the district. But where those powers have been retained, it's been possible in two areas, in London and in Nottinghamshire. The bus service has expanded and the network has expanded. Where you've had the privatised system and deregulation, there's been a constant contraction, particularly in the rural areas. And you know this is a national phenomenon. Well, about bus provision, it does.
Thank you, Councillor McBride. Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Matt. According to figures from a Health and Wellbeing Board recently, marked Kirklees Outcomes Population Indicators, both economic growth per head and gross disposable income are shown as significantly lower than the national average, with growth being significantly lower than Yorkshire, the Humber too. The gap in growth between Kirklees and region and national has increased for the last 18 years, now doubled in comparison to the national. Disposable income appears to be improving, but the gap has widened year on year compared with the region and nationally. What are we doing about that at the moment, and why isn't it working?
It's not working because we have a coalition government and then a Tory government that underinvests and underfunds the north of England to the tune of, for every pound that is spent in Yorkshire, 5 are spent in London and 3 are spent in the southeast. That unfairness and that, what should we say, maldistribution has been going on for years, particularly in the last decade. And we have been made demonstrations through the West Yorkshire, through the City region, and through Sigoma and the LGA to put that right. If there's going to be any future for this country, we've got to address the issue of regional imbalance. And a big part of it is this part of the world is massively underinvested, as is the northern region and the northwestern region. And this is the critical issue.
Councillor David Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor McBride has just referred to the geographical imbalance of investment, something which we're all concerned about. Can I bring him to your capital plan, please, where there is an awful lot of investment for Huddersfield and Dewsbury, and guess what, not much for anywhere else. You did give us a tantalising inference at the last council meeting that you may be prepared to put some regeneration investment into other towns and villages. Could you confirm that that will be the case? And if so, will it include investment for all wards? And will you be holding meetings with ward members first to ascertain what their priorities would be for that investment?
Councillor McBride.
I can confirm that there is money in the budget and we intend to spend it proportionally throughout the borough, in towns and townships. It will not be inevitably the same order as in Huddersfield and Dewsbury, but it will be proportionate, and it will involve local members. That I can promise you. Now, why is things being left so bad? We have had massive cuts. Kirklees has had a cut of 60% in central government funding in the last 10 years. We're having to live with that. The money that is now forthcoming is using what other sources we might get from West Yorkshire and some of our own capital money, which means borrowing. And I think it's prudent borrowing to say, if nobody else is going to invest in this area, then Kirklees Council will. And it is prudent. But I do, yes, we will involve other areas and involve councillors in the process.
Thank you, Councillor McBride. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to pick up on a few things we've been discussing tonight. I'll just go back to the bus things we've just been talking about. You've exchanged with my colleague, Councillor Taylor. You're right about the deregulation, and you've got some points, but we spend money, or not we spend money, but Section 106 monies are often incumbent on developers to provide bus passes for residents in new developments. And if those bus passes are not taken up, which in most cases in my ward they're not, then that money is just returned back to the developer. So that's one possible thing that we've looked at in our ward. That why are we not looking at that again? So we could actually think about bus services in general rather than providing bus passes that are never used. I'll go back to your other point earlier this evening when the market traders came to speak about the open market, part of the Huddersfield blueprint. I think they've got a really good point. We need to see that the people who are visiting town centres to go shopping need to be able to go to shops and the market and the other activities at the same visit. We don't want them out on a limb by Tesco's where they're not going to get the footfall. It's all down to the footfall. So, I think they made a really good point there, and I think we really need to look at that in the round. And I know you've got a vision for Huddersfield, and I'd like to see that vision come to fruition. I'm not knocking the vision, the Huddersfield blueprint. I think it's required, and it just needs to be done properly. So we need to take those views into account. My last point. Last year in this council we passed a motion which put an emphasis on all developments that all major road schemes were going to have an impact. We're going to look at the impact upon Flockton. So we're talking about the Cooper Bridge scheme again here. We've talked about it a few times tonight. Now, whichever form that takes, whether it's A, B or C, all of those different options are going to have an impact on Liley Lane, Grangemore, all the areas that interlink with those road systems. So people in Dalton Ward, people in Murfield Ward, and definitely people in Armonbury and Kirkburton Ward. So what work has gone on to look at the impacts of Cooper Bridge upon the Flockton scheme? And if there has got some work underway, can we share it with ward councillors, please?
Councillor McBride.
Questions there about the rural bus services. It's one of the major reasons the bus service is so poor in your area is the reduction in the funding for subsidised transport. West Yorkshire has reduced its contribution to subsidised services by 30 million in the last year. Why have they done that? Not because they don't believe in bus service, because like Kirklees, all of the other districts have been impoverished by this programme of austerity which has been imposed on them. So they cannot make the contribution they have in the past. It's interesting, when the companies find this, that they're not getting that degree of subsidy, they can't run an efficient service. Thus you have Arriva and First talking about pulling out of buses completely, which leaves us with a huge dilemma, which will be, do we take up bus service with adequate funding? If we do need some substantial, helpful funding from central government to make the whole system work. With regard to I've given so many answers on Flockton, I think everyone's sick of it. Yes, we've looked at the particular needs of Flockton again and again. I gave, I think, the last council or the council before an example of 4 analyses of Flockton in the last 10 years. And more recently, this time last year, I went out to talk to the people of Flockton and talked about what we were doing and explained to them the limits of what we were doing and why. So when Cooper Bridge is completed, which will be in something like 7 years' time, it may long term have a knock-on effect backwards. That will be looked at in the process. So should it have such a changing impact on Flockton, that will be taken into account in further allocations but again, it'll be by West Yorkshire. And it'll be based on an assessment of, is this one of the most, as it were, deserving schemes by comparison with comparable schemes throughout the whole of West Yorkshire.
Councillor Armour. Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor McBride. Network Rail are consulting on plans to upgrade the rail link between Huddersfield and Dewsbury. Part of this scheme would see the closure of Cornbridge Road at Bradley, whilst two bridges are replaced. What plans are the council making to minimise the disruption caused by this closure, given that the B618 and Dalton Bank Road will be isolated from Cooper Bridge? Flockton bypass might help.
Of the impact that an upgrade of TransPennine will have, very positively in the long term, but in the short term it will cause great problems. You've mentioned some of them. There are estimates that it might be 39 weeks of working. What the Network Rail have already been to talk to officers in more detail. They've talked to West Yorkshire about how they're going to work with us to minimise the disruption, change the rail traffic at times when they're working on the Huddersfield and Ravensthorpe. Bear in mind they're going to provide a new station at Ravensthorpe, but they are planning what to do. We have said, in your planning, it's got to be totally with Kirklees, because our officers need to be able to plan with you for the disruption it will have on the road system. So acutely aware of the problem, and it will be very difficult for roughly a year, probably in about 18 months, 2 years.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to start firstly by inviting Councillor McBride to apologise to the people of Flockton for saying that he's sick of talking about Flockton. I think that was an outrageous comment to make, and he should apologise immediately. I'll give him the opportunity to respond to that, and then I'll ask my questions, if I may.
What I meant, answering questions which seem to be the same questions again and again and again. It gets very repetitive, and I think people are sick of hearing the answers.
Councillor Taylor.
You could try looking for other solutions then. Going on to my questions, I mean, there were so many things that he didn't answer the first time round, and I'll go back and ask the question again. And this is why the transport framework and the transport strategy associated with the local plan ignores everything south of Waterloo. That part of Kirklees is being ignored when it looks at investment, it looks at transport, it llooks at connectivity. There is nothing planned in the areas that I represent through further out. My other comment I'd like to make is several times tonight he's gone on about cuts and austerity and how dreadful it has been and the 60% reduction. And I understand that, and I understand the rationale for why there had to be some tough decisions made. But it hasn't stopped our neighbours from investing. So if you look at the investment that's gone into Wakefield, or you look at the investment that's gone into Leeds, or the investment that's gone into Bradford over the last 10 years, but nothing has happened in Kirklees. They've suffered from exactly the same tight financial circumstances that Kirklees has suffered from, but very little has happened here. And he can't just use that blame the Tories excuse all of the time for the fact that this council has underperformed in terms of investing in the infrastructure and investing in its area when compared with neighbouring authorities. So perhaps you'd like to address that one. My final comment, again, and he's probably sick of talking about this as well, but Cooper's Bridge, he's talking about revised plans, and my colleagues have mentioned this, but one of the things that hasn't been mentioned is what engagement there's been with local councillors who will be impacted by this. Because I'm not aware, well, certainly I, who will be impacted by this, have not had any consultation or engagement. And I'm looking around at my colleagues in Marefield or in Liversedge and Gummersall, don't think they have either. And I thought this council had put councillors at the heart of all we do. And yet it would appear that that doesn't extend to when we're talking about significant investment in transport infrastructure that is going to impact on all of our local residents. Thank you, Mr.
Councillor McBride.
With regard to Cooper Bridge, the scheme has been known for 2 years, so it's not so new. It's a revision, and as I explained, it's an attempt to divert traffic across a wider area. It's been out to consultation for 5 weeks, and all relevant councillors were involved in it. Well, I was assured they were. Well, they didn't consult with councillors in Kirkburton. It was councillors predominantly in Ashbrook and in Dalton.
Can you let Councillor...
The wards directly affected.
Councillor McBride.
Is allowed to correct it.
Right, yeah, that's fine. Go
Mr. Mayor, the point that myself and others are making about a lack of coordination, lack of contact, is about the amended Cooper Bridge scheme, which we've read about in the papers. We've seen referred to West Yorkshire Combined Authority, but despite what the Cabinet member is saying, the amended proposition has not been put back to consultation or discussed with members. It's been discussed with Councillor McBride and officers in private, as he admitted. When will it come to a democratic decision-making body?
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Councillor McBride.
It has been. The revised scheme has been out to consultation, and it was for 5 weeks, and it was roughly 4 months ago. Because I got the results of that consultation quite recently.
Thank you very much, everybody. I think we've come to...
16.2, I would like to move to a vote on the UC motion on the agenda. It has been on the council agenda for over 12 months, so I would like to move to a vote.
Can we just keep it? Can I just speak with the legal officer, please? Can you keep everybody quiet? Right. Right. Councillor Opal, are you proposing, yeah? Who's seconding? Right, thank you.
We do on this.
Right, show of hands who's supporting this. We've already closed that. Well, he's answered it. He's answered it to his. Can we just not? We've had a good meeting today, so please don't spoil it. So can we? He's already replied to your question. Well, I'm saying he has. Well, who's in charge of the meeting? Am I in charge or are you in charge? I've listened to everything. He's answered the meeting. So could you please?
It is after 9 o'clock, Mr. Meeting is closed.
Well, I say when the meeting is closed. Not you. Are you in?
Before the 9 o'clock.
Well, you.
So
It was before 9 o'clock when she moved it.
Do you want to move into it?
Can we just... The legal officer is going to speak.
Sit down.
Right. For clarity, under Council Procedure Rule 16.2, the Council Procedure Rule 16.2 has to be moved before 9 o'clock, and it's been moved for 2 items before 9 o'clock. So it's been moved before. There was then a discussion on another issue before we got to the opportunity to get to the vote. As it's been moved and seconded in both instances, we'll take the votes on whether we proceed to extend the meeting to undertake those 2 items of business rather than being moved and seconded and going directly to the vote.
Right, Councillor Opal, you...
The proposers of these two before us have proposed it after you have closed the meeting. We quite clearly heard you say
No,
the
I did not close the meeting.
closed.
No, I didn't close
You
the
quite
meeting.
clearly
I was
said
going to close the meeting, but I
is
never closed the
closed.
meeting. No. I closed item 14. I didn't close the meeting. I was going to close the meeting, but Councillor Opal stood up and she wanted to move this. So, Councillor Opal, you're proposing. Who's seconding? All those in favour, show hands, please.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, clarify what we're voting on.
Right.
Come on, behave yourselves, will you, everybody? Come on.
He is, yeah.
We have not extended standing orders, have we? We have not suspended.
We just...
So, no, we haven't had a vote before 9 o'clock to suspend standing orders.
We don't have to. Right.
Just answer the question.
Right. We don't have to suspend Council Procedure Rules. This has been moved in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 16, and it was moved before 9 o'clock. So the 2 questions need to be put. We'll do them in the order of agenda. Sorry, I haven't got my agenda in front of me. Just a second. So for 18. So first of all, we're taking a vote on whether we'll deal with agenda item 18 before the meeting is closed. So all those in favour of dealing with agenda item 18?
Councillor Bolt, come on.
Councillor McBride has said several times that he deplores the fact that decisions are being made without discussion. And here we are now talking about making major decisions on
Listen.
Councillor Bolt, can you please sit down?
Right.
You know, you should all realise there's people watching us out there, and you're not behaving. You need to behave yourself, everybody.
Right.
Right. So we're going to go back on Councillor Opal's. Yeah. Everybody in favour. Yeah. That's carried.
Right.
So Councillor Cooper.
Can we now?
You're proposing, yeah. Who's seconding?
It's already seconded. It's already
Right.
been
Okay. Can we show of hands, please?
So this is... Sorry, we'll get to that in a minute. So we're now talking about agenda item 20 about Leeds Bradford Airport. So this is a vote whether we extend the meeting to deal with that item of business. So all those in favour of doing that? 1, 2, 3, 6, 7. Right.
All
Those
against?
against? No. Those against taking it to the vote?
All against extending the meeting?
Right. That vote's lost. So we're just going to extend the meeting to deal with agenda item 18.
Right.
So
can we have a show of hands?
18.
People in favour?
No.
18.
The second was an amendment. No. Right. Sorry. Right. Sorry. So now we've just had a vote on whether we'll deal with the item. The item needs to be moved, needs to be seconded. What you've voted to do is, after it's been moved and seconded, and after the amendment's been moved and seconded and dealt with, they go directly to the vote. if there is an amendment that's going to be moved. Right, so if you can, Councillor Uppal, if you'd like to.
Right, okay, so we've done that.
Yeah, is that seconded, please? Right.
That's fine.
Right. There was an amendment. Is there an amendment? No. Right. Okay. So all those in favour? Against? Of the motion? All those in favour of the motion set out at agenda item 18?
Right, and all those...
All those against? Carried.
That's carried.
Thought it would.
Right, thank you very much, everybody.